And on digital radio, I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours, Chairman of the Global Britain Centre, Aman Bogle, and co-founder of Navara Media, Aaron Bastani. Coming up in my niggle at 4, I take on Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall head-on as the woman who axed the winter fuel payments for pensioners' lives. She lives actually more comfortably in a £4 million London mansion. With our taxpayers' money, we're footing the bill. So I've got a pull up on X asking, should we means test MPs for expenses? Yeah. Then in my Great British Debate this hour, Elon Musk was interfering a little bit in British politics. Some may see it as that. It's been rumoured the billionaire is planning to give Nigel Farage's Reform UK party a huge cash injection in a bid to reshape British politics. So I'll be speaking to his dad, Errol Musk, later on around about 5 o'clock. Then in the interview, nightclub king Stephen Less. He has over 40 years of experience in the leisure industry, operating nearly 50 bars and restaurants in London. He'll be here discussing his story and what is going on here.
Oh, guess what I've done? Made a proper error doing this again, Nana.
But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you, and a very good afternoon to you. It's just after 3 o'clock. Let's start with that breaking news that we brought you in the last half hour or so. We can now confirm that 20,000 migrants have so far arrived here in the UK after crossing the English Channel. That is since Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister. Sources at Downing Street confirming that today. In the early hours of this morning, it's understood 2 more small boats were picked up in the Channel, bringing dozens more migrants into the UK territory. That brings the total so far since July to more than 20,000. These 2 today are the first crossings, though, since the 16th of December. Until then, 19,988 crossings had been recorded since that Labour landslide victory in the election on the 4th of July. That means that the total so far for the whole year is now standing at 33,562. Those figures according to the Office for National Statistics. Well, in other news today, the assisted dying bill is facing fresh challenges as some MPs who backed it this week are now hinting they may be reconsidering their stance. Concerns over palliative care and safeguarding have sparked debate, with MPs set to propose amendments when the bill moves to its committee stage. Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, told us here on GB News that there is still a long road ahead.
Now that Parliament's voted on that on Friday, it will go into committee. It will be considered in much more detail now, like every other piece of legislation, and it should be because it's such a serious issue. And the House of Commons will have to vote on it again in a few months' time. So this bill, this big and serious measure, will be properly and fully considered clause by clause now, as it should be. And even though we had the vote on Friday, I still think there's probably a long way to go before this becomes law.
Well, Pat McFadden, speaking there, also suggested today that questions over the cost of assisted dying plans could be part of the next phase. The Conservatives' Victoria Adkins, though, who voted in favour of the bill, says it's important to keep the conversation going.
We saw across the House, from both those who voted aye, but also those who voted no, there was, for example, a real wish to see conversations about palliative care and the quality of palliative care continue. I think we also saw many heartbreaking examples, and there'll be viewers at home that have been personally affected by this, where they just want to see whether the law can get into a better place than it is at the moment.
The Prime Minister is set to launch Labour's most ambitious plan for change yet, he says, promising to hit key targets on the economy, on energy, the NHS and early education before the next election. Whitehall is in for a shake-up, with a new Cabinet Secretary now tasked with transforming the government into a machine focused on delivery. Sir Keir Starmer warns that managed decline has seeped into the government, but says this is now a turning point for the country's future. But with approval ratings dropping to just 22%, questions are growing over whether he can convince the public. Meanwhile, Labour's governing body's also eyeing changes that could reshape the powers of regional mayors. Greg Wallace has hit back at claims of misconduct, accusing what he described as middle-class women of a certain age driving allegations. The MasterChef presenter stepped down on Thursday this week as accusations of inappropriate comments are being investigated. While the TV star Kirsty Allsop and singer Sir Rod Stewart are among those sharing allegations, with Allsop calling his behaviour totally unprofessional. The production company Banner J UK has urged anyone with concerns to come forward as the investigation continues. But Wallace denies the allegations, saying he's worked with thousands of contestants and has nothing to hide. A 34-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of rape at the Groucho Club in Soho in London. The arrest took place on Saturday night at an address in Hertfordshire, according to the Metropolitan Police. At this stage, the force says there is no suggestion that any employees of the club were involved. Well, the Groucho Club, a private members venue, is popular with celebrities and had its licence suspended earlier this week following a request by the Met Police. We've also heard that the woman reporting the incident is being supported by specialist officers. And the Princess of Wales is set to deliver a heartfelt Christmas message at her annual carol service at Westminster Abbey, urging attendees to embrace love as she says the greatest gift we can receive. And in a letter to 1,600 guests, including members of the royal family, Princess Catherine reflected on love's ability to shine bright even in our darkest times. Olympic legend Sir Chris Hoy is facing terminal cancer, and Lindsay Burrow, the widow of rugby star Rob Burrow, will both be lighting candles in a tribute to loved ones who are lost and those still battling illness. The service, combining tradition and star-studded performances, will be broadcast on Christmas Day, along with 15 other community carol services taking place on the same night across the UK.
Thank you, Sam. Listen, it's just coming up to 8 minutes after 3 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live online and on digital radio and TV. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should we means test MPs for expenses? Cabinet Minister Liz Kendall, who axed pensioners' winter fuel payments, has her own £350 a month energy bills paid by the taxpayer while she lives in a £4 million London mansion. She doesn't need it, surely. Then in the next Great British Debate, I'm asking, a Labour right to shun the US as government sources claim the trade deal with Donald Trump's America is unviable. And in Worldview, joining me, the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge, who will give us an update on what's going on stateside, including, according to the latest poll, Donald Trump is apparently more popular with British voters than Sir Keir Starmer. It's not difficult, is it? That's coming up in the next hours. Ever send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. So, God, where does it end? I mean, these ministers, Cabinet Minister Liz Kendall, branded a hypocrite for removing winter fuel payments for tens of millions of pensioners, whilst bills at her second home are being met for by the public purse, which is you and I. The Work and Pensions Secretary says she is allowed to claim costs for the second property in her Leicestershire West constituency. The most recent documents revealed taxpayers covered just under £4,000 in energy costs, as over 100,000 pensioners will be forced into poverty because, apparently, according to the government, they earn enough or should have enough to cover it themselves because, of course, it's been means-tested. Well, joining me now, former Labour Minister Ivor Kaplan. Ivor, welcome. Now, let's start this off. So there she is, Liz Kendall, living in Notting Hill with her hubby, who I think he's an ex-something and also worked in the city, so obviously has quite a bit of money. Notting Hill is very, very nice and swish. And she has a second home in a constituency which she lives in, which is probably rented, which the taxpayer covers. Why should the taxpayer cover her fuel? She can afford it.
Well, the simple thing here, Nana, is that she's perfectly entitled to do what she's done, and she's perfectly entitled to have the house that she wants in London, in Notting Hill. But let's just say this: these are two different things as well. The issue about the pensions and the decision made by the whole cabinet is very different to what people do in order to be able to deal with the two things that MPs and particularly ministers have to do. One is they have to be available to do the stuff that they need to do in their constituency, and secondly, they need to be available in London so that various other things can then be sorted out if necessary. So
Listen,
that's how these things operate.
I get it, right, but we pay the rent. So in this second property, she gets the rent, which I think is very generous, but fair enough. Yeah. But while she's in that house, the expenses that she or the other ministers incur should be down to them to pay for, yeah? So in your own property, if a company pays for the rent, it shouldn't have to pay for your fuel and everything else. That's down to you. And especially when you're chucking in policies that means test others and their ability to pay when you can pay. So Nigel Farage doesn't claim back fuel. I don't think any of the MPs on £93,000 a year should be claiming fuel and other things. They shouldn't be claiming for food in that second house that they get taxpayer-free, and she absolutely shouldn't be claiming fuel, or she should be means tested for that part of the benefit, as it were.
Nana, let's just be very clear. The rules haven't changed. This is exactly the same as the Conservative Party had for most of the 14 years. So the fact that this is how ministers and it's being exposed, that's absolutely fine. But it is the same as the Conservative Party during their time in office.
Yeah, so what's your point? So what, though? So what? It's wrong.
Well, my point is, why on earth are we talking about this? Well, it's not an issue that actually has that kind of tenets. It's not.
I think
there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong.
I think there's a lot wrong.
The minister has done.
Listen, it might be part of the rules, and the Conservative parties may have done it, and it might have been going on since the beginning of time. The bottom line is, when something is being done and it actually starts to look very wrong, then I think we should start to examine it and potentially change it. If you can afford things, and this government have said those with the broadest shoulders will carry the heaviest burdens, then I think they should be leading by example, because she doesn't need the expenses, and it's down to her how much energy she uses. So that means she can leave that house with everything all going on without, all lights on, heating on. Not that she would, but she might do, and we'll cover the expense. There needs to be some level of real accountability from some of these people.
Now, if there are to be changes, then there are processes that can be used at Westminster by the parties or by other parties. It's there, but this is how it has operated for, as far as I can remember, for a long time. And whether it's right or wrong is a different matter. But let me just say this: for Liz Kendall, she has done nothing wrong. No, nothing wrong at all.
Nobody's saying that she's done anything wrong.
Just doing the normal thing that people do.
Nobody's saying that she's done anything wrong, but we are questioning whether it is actually right for those MPs who are on a pretty decent salary, when they get every expense in that second home, most of the expenses, so the living expenses, the rent, or contributing towards it, they get all those things for the home itself. When they're in that house, incurring costs like everybody else, why should we be paying for it? As soon as very generously, they get their rent paid for them. I'm not going to argue against that. Fair enough. But it's like offering to pay their food in that house. Why on earth, when you're taking money from pensioners who you have means tested as to whether they will get this allowance and benefit, why is it that that should not apply to the MPs? Do you think that even though it's been there since time began, as you're saying, that perhaps MPs should be means tested for things like fuel in that second home?
If there are to be changes, then they should be done properly by all the parties and through Westminster, not by people just saying, oh, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong. It would have to be properly dealt with by the parliamentary authorities. It's not just something for one person. In this instance that you've raised is Liz Kendall. That's not how this works.
But I'm talking about all of them, see, and I doubt, just like they obviously don't turn back their pay rises because they say that it's an independent committee who give us the money, so we certainly can't change that. It's not our fault. We'll just have to take it. But there are things very wrong, I think, in Westminster. And when the rest of the country is struggling, we are looking at a lot of our MPs. Nigel Farage has turned his away. He's not taking it. And we're looking at what they are getting and how they're punishing the rest of us. And I think the problem here is the detachment from reality that we all are going through. This is why they're not coming up with decent policies, because they have no understanding of how the rest of us live. Do you not think, and I'll ask again either, that perhaps that needs to be changed and MPs should be paying for their own fuel expenses if they can afford it? Should it be means tested?
Well, over the last 20, 30 years that this has been operating, by my memory and the time that I used that particular system, it was there and you just signed it off and that was it. Now, if there are to be changes, if people say, well, there should be changes, then that's a completely different matter that you can then see how that might work. And the point you're making now is obviously correct. And for that purpose, you might want to then say, well, we should try and change this. Now, that then becomes a matter for the Westminster authorities, not for the parties. And that's how it would work. And that's how it worked previously when we last made some of these changes.
Well, I would implore those people to make some form of changes, because I think it's absolutely ludicrous that if an MP can afford it in their second home, they should not. So they should be able to expense the fuel. I think it's ridiculous. Ivor Captain, thank you very much. He's a former minister. Thank you. Well, joining me now is a former Tory MP, Neil Parish. Neil, welcome to the programme. Really good to talk to you. So, Neil, what's your view on this, your thoughts on this? Should MPs really...
I think my view is it was very unwise to take the £300 from pensioners in the first place, because many of them suffer cold and may land up in hospital through being cold. And so I think it was a short-sighted. I think it's bound to put pressure back on ministers like and Secretary of State like Liz Kendall and others if they are taking the second allowance and taking the heating allowance, because I mean, I was no saint when I was in Parliament, far from it, but the one thing I did is I took my rent, but I never took any expenses on the second home in London. I was 180 miles away from the constituency, so you were entitled to rent a property. That was fine. But you see, you would use electricity, you would have food if you were at home anyway. And so I don't really see why the taxpayer should pay for the second lot of heating. So I think this will have to be looked at. Quite right, it'll be looked at by the parliamentary authorities. But I think, it's no good to means test pensioners on pension credit. And then are they going to get the heating allowance? And then, as you quite rightly say, then MPs to then have on a 93,000 salary to be getting their heating paid for. It just isn't right. I know it's within the rules, but you see Keir Starmer with his clothes for his wife, that was all within the rules. But people don't like it. It's hypocritical. That's the trouble. And I think the one thing that people hate about politics is the hypocrisy. And it happens, I'm not suspending to say it doesn't happen in all parties, but I think the Labour Party started on this route of the £300, reduction in heating allowance. And I think it was a very wrong decision. And I think they've only got themselves to blame, really, that this is being investigated.
Yeah, well, I just find it shocking that she would even take the allowance or think that she should be claiming for it, because she lives in a £4 million home and many of the other politicians are very wealthy as well. She also gets this £93,000 salary and she gets all the expenses in the second home. Fair enough, we'll accept that we will pay the rent for these properties when they're in their constituency because they have to be there. Fine, we've accepted that. But when you're in that house, doing your own thing and living in that house, we're not going to pay for your food or your water bills or the things that a house would incur when you're in the house. That's got to be down to you. So I'm saying that these now they've started to scrutinise us, the general public, about the things that we, and decide to means test us. I think it should be reversed to them. There might be some MPs who can't afford it, in which case we can help them out, but it shouldn't be carte blanche.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I said, I think it's probably something high time the parliamentary authorities looked at. Like I said, my view would be that pay for the rent for your property, but not pay for anything else, because your cost, you would have that anyway from your salary. You're expected to live and look after yourself from your salary. So that is where I think there is a mistake. And I think, like I said, I keep repeating, but the Labour Party set this task of taking away money from people that really needed it. And so naturally, people are going to look back at the politicians and say, do you actually need that money? Should you be actually taking that? And I think, they will have to put their own house in order, literally, put it in.
And when I was speaking to Ivor, he was talking about proper parliamentary procedure and that it has to be done that way. And, what is the way that we as a public can get this properly looked at and force the hand of the MPs to start looking at what they're taking from the taxpayer and whether they are actually value for money?
There is one way it can be done, Nana, which is that if you run a petition, if individuals run a petition and it gets, and you can do it electronically, if you can get 100,000 signatures, which I wouldn't think would be difficult on this, you then trigger a debate in Parliament, and then Parliament and parliamentarians would have to answer. And there's nothing, and I speak as a previous MP, there's nothing embarrassing than having something like that in Parliament. Are you going to go in and defend it? You probably aren't, you see. And so therefore you'll find change will come about. So that's if people want to, I don't think I think GBNews could almost run one if you wanted to.
Well, I might start it.
You could do as an individual or whatever, and like I said, you put it up online. You put a very simple thing. Only MPs should only be entitled to the rent on their second home, something like that. Something very simple, and then just narrow it down to that. And I don't think they're going to starve if they've got to pay their electric bill and their water bill and all those things, because I think it's wrong what's going on at the moment.
Well, it is, isn't it? Because then they are literally completely insulated from the effect of their own policies. And that, I think, is a dangerous place to be, because obviously then you don't realise that when you take the winter fuel allowance from pensions, it's going to be hard, because you're thinking, well, what's the problem? They're millionaires on paper. Some of them have got £1 million homes. They're not considering that actually the house they actually live in, it will incur expenses that pensioner must pay for. And in a £1 million home, if a pensioner's there, when you're 80-something, you're not in a position to fluidly move easily or sell the house. You'll probably just say, I'm going to stay in this house till I die, because you're thinking that, you're not going to live for 30 years. And so you're thinking, well, I'll do that, but you may not have the cash. And all the expenses applied to that house, including council tax and all the other things which are based on the size of it, these MPs aren't being affected by.
Absolutely. You take, I'm a farmer. You take a lot of farmers they're in big old houses, very difficult to heat. A lot of them might have quite a bit of capital, but very little cash. A lot of people, the older people, perhaps bought their house, 20, 30, perhaps 50 years ago. Yes, on paper, they might be worth quite a lot of money, but they've got no cash, no income, very low incomes. And of course, pensioners are very proud people as well. And they don't want to be forever claiming benefits. And so this was the best thing about the £300. They got it anyway. I mean, those that wanted it didn't want it could give it to charity. Those high taxpayers, it was taxed away from anyway, and largely they paid for it because 80% of the tax are paid by 20% of the population because they're earning more money. So all of these things, it was really short-sighted, and I have no sympathy for the ministers and MPs on this, because they started it basically.
Well, they did.
I think we should finish it, don't you?
I think we, the public, should absolutely finish it, and we'll leave it there. Neil Parish, thank you so much. Really good to talk to you.
Very much.
As a former Tory MP, Neil Parish. If you just tuned in, 23 minutes after 3 o'clock, how do you feel about that? Let me know. gbnews.com/your say. I'm Nana Akua. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, are Labour wise to shun the US? But next, should we means test MPs for expenses? This is GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
down to earth,
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
and most importantly, honest,
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Serving some of the most talked about food in Chelsea, executive head chef of Number 50 Cheney, Ian Smith, has created a range of menus with a hint of the homeland, using the finest British ingredients sourced by trusted suppliers. Ian Smith was head chef at Jason Atherton's Social Eating House and spent time in the kitchens of the Galvin brothers in joins me now to tell more of the story. Tell me about number 50 Cheney.
Yes, so we are a beautiful restaurant down in a corner of Chelsea on the Embankment with an amazing team. And we are really pride ourselves on, being an affordable luxury that people, really are wanting to return to week in, week out.
What's the view from your restaurant?
Well, you can see the Embankment, the Thames, and Albert Bridge, which is very nice.
Very
nice. Actually lit up. Very romantic.
And tell me a little bit about your philosophy. I was talking there about having a touch of the homeland, British food, seasonal food.
Yes. Yeah, I think, for me, great cooking is, with simplicity on finest ingredients, cooked with simplicity, and ultimately, there to be enjoyed through... Yeah, sorry.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to say, it starts as a young person's business. You went into it very young, didn't you? 15?
Yes. Yeah, so I was 15. I sat in my parents' bedroom, called the Ritz, the Dorchester and Claridge's, and very luckily, a man on the end of the phone, 21 years ago, sent me on to a college course called the Specialised Chef Scholarship. 3 days later, I had a Ritz stamp letter through the post, and off me and my parents went, and luckily I got on the course.
And how old were you when you got your first responsibility, would you say?
I think the biggest responsibility in my career is today. Leading number 50 Cheney.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon. It's fast approaching 27 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome to GB News. We are Britain's news channel. I'm Nana Akua. And it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, should we means test MPs' expenses? Now, the Cabinet Minister who axed pensioners' winter fuel payments has her own £350 a month energy bill paid by the taxpayer. Guess what? While she lives in a £4 million London mansion in Notting Hill, I think. So I think that's a very nice part of London. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, well, should we actually means test MPs for expenses? Surely, for her second home and the expenses she incurs, she can afford it. Right, GB News spoke earlier to Shadow Environment Secretary Victoria Atkins about this. Have a listen.
Question. Should MPs claim back money from the taxpayer for their fuel bills, yes or no?
I think so. In answer to this,
yes or no?
It's not for me to decide how.
Yes or no?
No, Camilla, forgive me. I'm not accepting the premise of the question. It is for individual MPs to decide their expenses claims, what they're prepared to claim for. What I will say, however, is that we as Conservatives are the effective opposition to this budget of broken promises, and we are working very, very hard to hold this government to account. But we need people to join us so that we can hold them to account and, I hope, beat them at the next election. That's how we get this back. That's how we correct this terrible circumstance of this Labour government.
Victoria Atkins.
She didn't want to answer because then, of course, she would be under the cosh for that one. Well, joining me now, my panel, Chairman of the Global Britain Centre, Aman Bogle, and also co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Welcome to you both, Aaron. Thank you very much. First time for both of you, I think. Right, Aaron Bastani, I'll start with you. What's your view on this?
Well, I think you're being very generous. In that previous debate about maybe it being means tested, I would get rid of it. Sometimes you see, for instance, a member of Parliament, newly elected, they might be in a council house, social housing, and people say, well, they should give it up. I think that's really unfair, because you may have a general election 2 years later, they lose that seat, and they're now out of housing, and they may go back to ungenerous private economic circumstances. This is very different. While you are an MP, you're on very good money, more than £90,000 a year, an extraordinarily generous pension, nobody ever talks about, it's amazing. And you have enough money to pay for your own energy bills. It's even worse, of course, with Liz Kendall, because she's not just a backbencher, and at the same time she's living with this person who is extraordinarily, fabulously wealthy, and she's overseeing the means testings, the winter fuel allowance, which of course we can discuss. But it's an awful, awful, awful look. And it does strike me, just listening to Victoria Atkins there, do these people, when they see all these goodies when they first join Parliament, do they not think, This is rather bad, actually. I suspect after a few weeks, a few months, virtually all of them come to be conditioned to think it's normal, and actually they deserve it, and that's a big problem.
Well, Liz Kendall she takes home around about £67,000 for a ministerial salary, in addition to the £91,000 that you get paid as an MP. What's that, £158,000? That's quite a lot.
Earning probably more than the Prime Ministerial salary. But more than that, Nana, I echo a lot what Aaron just said, but I think I'd also argue that these people are the same people who are means-testing pensioners.
Well, exactly.
To get their winter fuel allowance while they freeze today in this sub-zero temperatures. But I would also say that it's about time that the only way to fix all this is to start electing MPs with a moral compass, with some ethics. Surely they shouldn't have to be told that this is not really the right thing to be doing. And I would go as far as saying abolish the Conservative and Labour Candidates Department and start afresh. I mean, these lot are supposed to be the socialists. Surely they should know better than what they claim and preach otherwise.
Because the procedure for this, and I did speak to Neil Parish about it, he was saying, we'll start a petition, we've already had a couple of those ones for whether we want Keir Starmer or not, and try and get some change in Westminster. But this is the sort of thing that they should be aware of.
Well, they are, and that's the problem. So if you go back to 2009, we had the expensive scandal of, duck houses and bath plugs and all that sort of thing. But we've already forgotten about it. Where is all that today in our elections? How are we holding these people to account?
Well, they're standing on a plinth of integrity, but I think that they've lost their way if they think this is acceptable.
Well, that was Starmer's calling card, of course, in opposition. They have really made a rod for their own back. Because even if they were pretty good, you're never going to be whiter than white, which is what Keir Starmer was basically asking of the Conservatives. We saw it as well with Louise Haigh, with that resignation a few days ago. I don't know precisely what happened there. But personally, I don't think that Secretaries of State should be quitting because of something that happened 10 years ago as a spent conviction. But it's very hard for you as the Labour Party to make that argument, given that they were creating these panics about the most trivial things with the Tories for many years.
Of course, we had the whole Labour Party saying, lawbreakers can't be lawmakers and all that sort of nonsense about Boris, about a piece of cake. And now, of course, we've got, mobile phones and Liz Kendall taking money for heating her own house when she's taken it away from pensioners. 143 questions. That's how many questions a pensioner has now got to answer to
get the pension credit.
Yeah, no, to get the winter fuel allowance.
Is it for the winter fuel? Because the pension credit, I think, is a 21-page document that you have to fill in, and it will take about 6 or 7 months for the credit to then be assigned to you if you qualify.
Qualify, exactly. And I mean, look, this shows the calibre of people that are leading us in this parliament. That they do not have the moral compass to think, oh, well, hold on a second, I've got enough money, but no, I'm going to tell the taxpayer even more.
Wow.
It's ridiculous.
Well, you see, that's the thing. We've started on agreement. What do you think? gbnews.com/your say. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up, are Labour wise to shun the US? But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom. 33 minutes past 2. Well, the number of migrants crossing the Channel under Sir Keir Starmer's leadership has now hit a new milestone, over 20,000 arrivals since Labour took office in July. The latest boats arrived today as Border Force intercepted 2 small inflatable boats carrying, we believe, around 100 people. That marks the first crossings in nearly 2 weeks. It also brings this year's total to now just under 34,000, already surpassing 2023's figure of 29,500. It comes as Labour is preparing to unveil its new migration plan, though this morning ministers said that will not include a target on reducing numbers. The Prime Minister is set to launch Labour's most ambitious plan for change yet, he says, promising to hit key targets on the economy, energy, the NHS and early education before the next election. Means Whitehall is in for a shake-up, with a new Cabinet Secretary tasked with transforming government into a machine focused on delivery. Sir Keir Starmer warns that managed decline has seeped into government, but says that this is now a turning point for the country's future. But with approval ratings dropping to just 22%, questions are growing over whether he can convince the public. Meanwhile, Labour's governing body is also eyeing changes that could reshape the powers of regional mayors. Greg Wallace has now hit back at claims of misconduct, accusing middle-class women of a certain age, he says, of driving the recent allegations. The MasterChef presenter stepped down on Thursday as accusations of inappropriate comments revealed were made over 17 years and now being investigated. The TV star Kirsty Allsop and singer Rod Stewart are among those sharing some of the allegations, with Allsop calling his behaviour totally unacceptable. The production company responsible for the programme has now urged anyone with concerns to come forward as their investigation continues. And Wallace is denying the allegations, saying he has worked with thousands of contestants over his time on the programme and has nothing to hide. A 34-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of rape at the Groucho Club in London's Soho. The arrest took place on Saturday night at an address in Hertfordshire, according to the Met Police Force. At this stage, officers say there is no suggestion that any employees of the club were involved. That club, a private members venue popular with celebrities, had its licence suspended earlier this week following a request by the Metropolitan Police. The woman who reported the incident is now being supported by specialist officers. Well, let's turn to Turkey, where some breaking news has emerged in the last few hours that a 20-year-old British man has died after an unexplained fall into a lift shaft while on holiday there. Tyler Kerry from Essex was discovered fatally injured at a hotel in Antalya on Friday morning. His family say he was full of personality, kindness and compassion, adding that his death has left them completely devastated. More than £5,000 has already been raised online to help cover his funeral costs. And just before I hand you back to Nana, turning to some other breaking news in Belfast this hour, a police investigation is now underway following the sudden death of a woman in her 20s at a nightclub in the city. Emergency services were called in the early hours of the morning to that club after they received reports that 2 women had fallen unconscious. One of them sadly found dead at the scene. The other, we understand, remains in hospital receiving treatment. Officers are now urging anyone with information to come forward as their inquiries across Belfast continued. We will keep across any details on that as they come into us. For now, though, that is the latest from the newsroom. I'll be back with you in half an hour. Now for a short break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of blustery showers continuing through the rest of today, but we should see some clear spells overnight, and with some northerly winds on the way, it will be turning colder as we head in towards the new working week. This area of low pressure up to the north of the UK pushes away towards Scandinavia, leaving us northerly winds across all of the UK as we head through Monday. But back to Sunday evening, plenty of showers around. This band of showers across central areas pushes its way eastwards, turning particularly heavy over any high ground. But across southern areas, there should be some clear spells around between those showers, but it will still be quite a mild night compared to what we've seen recently. Temperatures in the south around 6, 7, perhaps 8 degrees, although with some northerly winds across parts of Scotland turning chillier here, perhaps a frost to start the day in places. For northern areas, it will be quite a cloudy start to the day on Monday. Across parts of Scotland, those showers that we see overnight turning increasingly to sleet and snow, particularly over the hills, so definitely feeling a bit of a chillier start here. Across Northern Ireland, we will still see some showers around through the morning, but these likely to be falling as rain. The further south you are, perhaps some sunshine to start the day. Across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day, but for Wales, southern eastern parts of England, perhaps a bit of a brighter start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine as we head through the morning. That band of showers across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards, bringing some quite brisk northerly winds across the eastern coast, so really feeling quite chilly here. But the further west you are, there should be some sunshine as we head through the afternoon. Plenty of blue skies around, even if we do see 1 or 2 showers, and the showers continuing to fall as sleet and snow across Scotland, and widely a much cooler day compared to the weekend. Temperatures generally closer to average, around 10 or 11 in the south and only 5 or 6 further north. Those brisk northerly winds continuing across eastern coast as we head through Monday evening, but for many of us it will be turning dry with plenty of clear spells, so that will lead to quite a chilly start on Tuesday, but wet weather is on the way through Tuesday afternoon and into Wednesday, and those temperatures slowly increasing as we head towards the second half of the week.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry, Tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
It's just coming up to 41 minutes after 3 o'clock. Welcome to GB News. We are Britain's news channel. Don't forget as well, you can download the GB News app. It is completely free. I'm Nana Akua, and it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. And I'm asking, as Labour continue in their behaviour in terms of the US, are they wise to shun them? The government sources have said that fury in the farming community over Labour's tractor tax has rendered a trade deal with Donald Trump's America unviable. But will this force us further into the clutches of Brussels? So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are Labour wise to shun the US? Well, joining me now, Chairman of the Global Britain Centre, Aman Bogle, was a co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. I'm going to start with you, Aman. What do you think?
Well, of course, I think it's always unwise to shun our greatest and closest friend and ally, the United States, especially when we've got President Trump coming back. He has been Britain's greatest friend in Washington, D.C. for a very long time. We had President Obama back in the day telling us, coming in here, interfering in our referendum, telling us we'll be back off the queue. Do you remember that? Whereas President Trump was literally saying to Boris and then Liz that, you know, look, the FTA is here, let's get it done. And then sadly he lost that election and wasn't there. But let's also not forget we got David Lammy, that absolute clownish foreign secretary of our country.
He reminds me of Zippy. Do you remember in the rainbow?
And that's exactly what he has done over the last 7-8 years. He's gone and he literally said he'd go and chain himself outside Downing Street when President Trump was here previously. So he's called him all sorts of names. It's very petty, you know, sixth form politics stuff.
Nazi sympathiser, I think he is. Psychopath or something.
Exactly. So do we really think that President Trump is going to be on best terms? Of course, having said that, President Trump is a very practical, pragmatic politician. He'd want good relationship with the United Kingdom, and I think that we might see the start of that with the cancelling off the handing over of the Chagos Islands that this government.
They're trying to push it through before he takes power. But you said that America are our closest ally or neighbour. They're not really. I mean, a lot of people would say that as the EU. But do you not see the Labour Party seem to be putting things in place to make it impossible for a trade deal with America, which is what this farming tax is all about?
Well, indeed, Labour's grand plan is to take us back into the EU through the back door. Whether it's the the youth mobility deal they want to get through, whether it's trying to make closer links with the customs union and the single market. Of course, they want to push us away from the US. But you know what? British business, 85% of them do no business at all with the EU.
Aaron Bastani.
So, a few things. We are in trouble if the US don't take a liking to us because we are dependent upon the US. I don't think that's particularly wise, but take, for instance, Trident. The submarines and the warheads, as I understand them, are British-made, British-serviced, but the missiles for the warheads are serviced in the United States, on the east coast of the United States. If, for whatever reason, a US president says we are not doing that anymore, we don't have Trident. Now, we have lots of very clever engineers in this country. I'm sure we could learn to service all that technology here. That would take a while. There are a number of military technologies like that. The F-35 is another one. We are dependent on the US. Like I say, I don't think that's particularly wise. However, we are where we are. And so I think there is a panic right now going through the British political class that if Trump doesn't like us, we're in deep water. What I would say about the farming thing is I don't think it's really EU-US. The problem is, are we going to keep subsidies for farmers or are we going to get rid of them? If you have a free trade deal with the United States, part of that, of course, is going to be access to our market, including for food. And the facts are that our farmers cannot compete on price when it comes to things like meat with US farmers because, of course, the economy of scale with the US is huge. You've got 330 million people. We have 68 million people. And I think this is a real challenge to something like Nigel Farage. He loves Mr. Trump. He's a big fan of the American British axis. But at the same time, he tries to appeal to these particular constituencies in British life who right now are really annoyed with Labour and the Conservative Party. So I think he's walking a bit of a tightrope there. And it's going to be quite hard, I think, for this new radical right in British politics. They're probably going to have to make the argument for agricultural subsidies.
Yeah, that'll be interesting if that's the case.
I mean, look at it this way also, Nana. Let's dissect a little bit of so far what we had in terms of foreign policy. I mean, we know that Starmer and Lammy has spent, more than, I think, nearly 50 days overseas. But Lammy became the first foreign secretary to go literally on his hands and knees in Beijing to his Chinese communist masters, literally begging them to do something with his administration. Is President Trump and his administration going to take that easily and say, OK, these are people who are serious?
I think that I think the Labour Party have an issue. They're in trouble a little bit with their foreign policy and the trade deals that they are looking to put forward. Even with the EU, I think they're slightly in trouble because I don't think the EU have much respect for this country at the moment. We're struggling heavily with all our borders and everything else like that. Listen, we'll talk more, running out of time, so I have to head to a break. But what are your thoughts? GBNews.com/your say. Coming up, World View. We'll be crossing live to the US to speak to the host of the Politics People podcast, Paul Dudridge. That's on the way.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
3 incredible young people from Essex are planning to become the youngest people ever to row, not sail, row, across the Atlantic Ocean.
It's about for 3,000 miles?
It is.
Give or take.
Almost exactly that, Sam.
The 3 flying fish, so-called, consists of Anna, Dunk, Harry, Alan and Rowan Daly, who are preparing to row that 3,000 miles across the Atlantic. It would be the second largest ocean in the world. And the trio are aiming to do that challenge in support of the Teenage Cancer Trust.
Well, I'm very pleased to say that Anna and Harry from the Flying Fish join us now. Very good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I think the two of you are bonkers, but brilliant. Absolutely incredible what you're doing to raise money for Teenage Cancer Trust. Why did you want to do this?
So our third person, Rowan, his friend actually died. So when he was in secondary school, I believe, one of his peers passed away, and Teenage Cancer Trust supported them and their family a lot. So it was definitely the right charity. Yeah, it was.
Absolutely awful. So you wanted to do something to raise money for teenage cancer. Why rowing?
So my dad did it in 2021.
The trip, the Atlantic trip?
Yeah, he rowed it as a pair. Where we live in Essex, they actually build the boats there. So we used to cycle round there past the boatyard, and he got interested and actually did it. He was the first year after COVID. And one night, we all met in the Air Cadets, so one night after Air Cadets, Rowan actually dropped me off home and the boat was outside. We were obviously waiting to get it sold. And I think he was asking some questions and we stood there at my porch and Rowan said, I reckon we could do that. And I was like, yeah, I reckon we could. And then we brought Harry on board, and that's kind of how it all came together.
If people are watching and they want to support you, do you have a
Yeah, we've got
GoFundMe page
social
yet?
media platforms at the Free Flying Fish. That's Facebook, Instagram and TikTok, and our GoFundMe links in all of the bios on there.
Fantastic.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. It's just coming up to 50 minutes after 3 o'clock. If you've just tuned in, where have you been? You've missed almost an hour. It's fine. There's a couple left, so stay with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Well, lots of you have been getting in touch with your views on gbnews.com/your say. We were talking a lot about the whole sort of fuel allowance and the fact that ministers get their allowances and expenses paid for in their second homes. And Janice has been in touch, and she says, I don't know about not having a moral calibre. I believe it's because practically all of the cabinet are intellectually inferior. Interesting.
That's enough.
Grumpy Granda says, I don't know how these politicians sleep at night. As someone said to me, Grumpy, if you do this, you could kill 4,000 people. I wouldn't do it. The thought of it would send me into a panic. I would make sure it could never happen. Starmer doesn't seem to care. Well, joining me now, my panel, Amal Bogle and also Aaron Bastani. A lot of people are not comfortable with the MPs, and even you guys actually were in agreement on this. I mean, Adrian says that's disgusting. MPs getting a £98,000 was £91,000 wage and a ministerial salary as well. Well, she's a minister, so that's why she gets the extra, and claiming heating allowance definitely needs to be stopped in a new code of conduct. They must adhere to, or they're out to look out of their expenses. I bet a lot of those are shocking as well. Yes. No.
I mean, look, I think it basically seems like a lot of these politicians have got a common minimum programme of what they can get away with, literally. And it's also a political choice, I would argue, because if you've got enough money to spend £10 million a day housing illegal dinghy-wallahs in four-star hotels, then you should have enough money to give to our pensioners to heat their homes in the winter. And also, same thing with farmers. You've got enough money to hand out to overseas aid for farmers in God knows where, but you haven't got them for our farmers. It's a political choice.
It does seem these are wrong choices, Aaron. Would you think these choices are wrong?
Well, I think there's a defence for both policies. Yeah. Winter fuel allowance changing and inheritance tax on land, because there is a massive problem with regards to people tax dodging who are very rich, buying land. The productivity of it falls. They're not using it to farm anything. Farmers themselves are saying this is a problem because my own, I can't expand the land I want to. Vineyards is a great example. People want more land for great British wines. They can't because people are buying land as a tax dodge and they get subsidies. Right? What an amazing con, frankly.
Well, couldn't you have a minimum productivity level?
Well, quite, exactly. So the problem is there. But if you are going down the inheritance tax route, you could say, we're going to do 10% on estates over 8 million, and we'll see how it goes. And I think it's the same with the winter fuel allowance. You've gone from 12 to 2 million people. You could say, you know what, we're going to take it from 2 million people. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll work really well. We'll save plenty of money. And I personally know people who said, I don't need the winter fuel allowance. I use the money to pay for my Christmas wines. Yeah. But I think the fact that they've done it so clumsily, and of course that's had massive consequences almost immediately with regards to the polls. I think I would put that question to you both, because you have different views to me politically. Why have Labour been so clumsy with stuff that is clearly very risky? I can't understand it.
I think it's stubbornness and, again, insulation from the reality, which is all part of this expenses thing where they're having a second home and so the expenses are being paid, so they're devoid from connection with the electorate, is what I think.
I think you're onto something out there. I think also it's ideologically driven. This is going after people who are traditionally conservative, farmers, pensioners. They're not going to vote Labour, so let's go after them.
And also, I think a lot of the farms are not in the constituencies, the Labour constituencies, which I think is another consideration, which is why I think
the Labour MP who managed to get 2,200 acres from his parents just days before the thing was announced, I think he had some privilege there.
It sounds like he has some insider information. Well, stay with me, though. Thank you so much. That's Aman Bogle and also Aaron Bastani. They'll be with me throughout the show. But next, my niggle on Liz Kendall, an utter hypocrite. His MPs earning over 90k have been subsidised by us, the taxpayers. Stay with me. You won't want to miss it. But let's first get an update with your weather.
will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of blustery showers continuing through the rest of today, but we should see some clear spells overnight. And with some northerly winds on the way, it will be turning colder as we head in towards the new working week. This area of low pressure up to the north of the UK pushes away towards Scandinavia, leaving us northerly winds across all of the UK as we head through Monday. But back to Sunday evening, plenty of showers around. This band of showers across central areas pushes its way eastwards, turning particularly heavy over any high ground. But across southern areas, there should be some clear spells around between those showers, but it will still be quite a mild night compared to what we've seen recently. Temperatures in the south around 6, 7, perhaps 8 degrees, although with some northerly winds across parts of Scotland turning chillier here, perhaps a frost to start the day in places. For northern areas, it will be quite a cloudy start to the day on Monday. Across parts of Scotland, those showers that we see overnight turning increasingly to sleet and snow, particularly over the hills, so definitely feeling a bit of a chillier start here. Across Northern Ireland, we will still see some showers around through the morning, but these likely to be falling as rain. The further south you are, perhaps some sunshine to start the day. Across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day, but for Wales, southern eastern parts of England, perhaps a bit of a brighter start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine as we head through the morning. That band of showers across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards, bringing some quite brisk northerly winds across the eastern coast, so really feeling quite chilly here. But the further west you are, there should be some sunshine as we head through the afternoon. Plenty of blue skies around, even if we do see 1 or 2 showers, and the showers continuing to fall as sleet and snow across Scotland, and widely a much cooler day compared to the weekend. Temperatures generally closer to average, around 10 or 11 in the south and only 5 or 6 further north. Those brisk northerly winds continuing across eastern coast as we head through Monday evening, but for many of us it will be turning dry with plenty of clear spells, so that will lead to quite a chilly start on Tuesday, but wet weather is on the way through Tuesday afternoon and into Wednesday, and those temperatures slowly increasing as we head towards the second half of the week.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British giveaway so far, with your chance to win a spectacular £50,000 in tax-free cash. 2025 could be amazing, with plenty of treats, holidays and fun on the horizon. How would you enjoy that cash? £50,000 will make someone our biggest ever winner. For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets and My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring. Not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date. Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. And for the next few hours, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it's yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for the next few hours, Chairman of the Global Britain Centre, Aman Bogle, and co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Coming up in my niggle, I take on Work and Pensions Secretary Liz Kendall. As the woman who axed the winter fuel payments for pensioners, she lives in a more than comfortable existence in her £4 million London mansion, with us taxpayers footing her heating bill in her second property. Well, I've got a poll up on X right now asking you, should we means test MPs' expenses? Then in my Great British Debate, should Elon Musk be interfering in British politics? His dad will be on here at 5. It's been rumoured that the billionaire is planning to give Nigel Farage's Reform UK party a huge cash injection in a bid to reshape British politics. Then in the interview, I'll be speaking to the nightclub king, Stephen Less. He has over 40 years of experience in the leisure industry, operating nearly 50 bars and restaurants in the capital. And what on earth is going on here?
Oh, guess what I've done? Made a proper error doing this again, Anna.
Stay tuned to find out. But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you very much. Good afternoon to you. It is just coming up to 2 minutes past 4. Well, a reminder of our top story this hour. The number of migrants crossing the Channel under Sir Keir Starmer has hit a new milestone with over 20,000 arrivals since Labour took office in July. The latest figures came today as Border Force intercepted yet 2 more boats carrying, we understand, around 100 people, marking the first crossings in now 2 weeks. This year's total now stands at just under 34,000, already surpassing last year's figure of 29,500. It comes as Labour is preparing to unveil its new migration plan, though we understand that will be without a target on reducing the numbers. The assisted dying bill is now facing fresh challenges as some MPs who backed it this week are now hinting they may reconsider their stance. Concerns over palliative care and safeguarding have sparked debate, with MPs set to propose amendments when the bill moves to its committee stage. Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, spoke to us here on GB News earlier and said there is still a long road ahead.
Now that Parliament's voted on that on Friday, it will go into committee. It will be considered in much more detail now, like every other piece of legislation, and it should be because it's such a serious issue. And the House of Commons will have to vote on it again in a few months' time. So this bill, this big and serious measure, will be properly and fully considered clause by clause now, as it should be. And even though we had the vote on Friday, I still think there's probably a long way to go before this becomes law.
Well, Pat McFadden speaking to us there also suggested there could be questions over the cost of the assisted dying plans and could be part of the next phase of discussions. The Conservatives' Victoria Atkins, who voted in favour of the bill, says it is important to keep the conversation ongoing.
We saw across the House, from both those who voted aye, but also those who voted no, there was, for example, a real wish to see conversations about palliative care and the quality of palliative care continue. I think we also saw many heartbreaking examples, and there'll be viewers at home that have been personally affected by this, where they just want to see whether the law can get into a better place than it is at the moment.
Victoria Atkins there speaking to us this morning. Well, Greg Wallace has hit back at claims of misconduct, accusing middle-class women of a certain age, he says, of driving the recent allegations. The MasterChef presenter stepped down on Thursday this week as accusations of inappropriate comments were made over 17 years and now being investigated. The TV star Kirsty Allsop and singer Rod Stewart, Sir Rod Stewart that is, are among those sharing allegations, with Allsop calling his behaviour totally unprofessional. Production company Banijay UK has urged anyone with concerns to come forward as the investigation continues. Greg Wallace, though, denies the allegations, saying that he has worked with thousands of contestants over his time on the programme and has nothing to hide. News in Russia, where the new defence budget, described as the most secretive since the Soviet era, has sparked fresh warnings, with a third of it being kept under wraps. President Vladimir Putin has just signed off a huge 25% increase, pushing military spending to now nearly a third of the entire Russian budget. That's £99.5 billion funnelled into defence as the war in Ukraine continues to drain resources. It also comes as sanctions on Gazprom Bank, that's Russia's oil and gas payment hub, have sent the ruble plunging below record levels against the dollar. Here, a 34-year-old man has been arrested on suspicion of rape at the Groucho Club in Soho in London. The arrest took place on Saturday night at an address in Hertfordshire, according to the Metropolitan Police. At this stage, the force say there is no suggestion that any employees of the club were involved. The Groucho, a private members venue popular with celebrities, had its licence suspended earlier this week following a request by the Met Police force. And the woman who reported the incident is, we understand, being supported by specialist officers. Well, in Ireland, a police investigation is now underway after the sudden death of a woman in her 20s at a nightclub in Belfast. Emergency services were called in the early hours of this morning after reports that 2 women had fallen unconscious at the club. One of those women was sadly found dead at the scene. The other remains in hospital receiving treatment. Officers are now urging anyone with information to come forward as they continue their inquiries. In Turkey, a 20-year-old British man has died after an unexplained fall into a lift shaft while on holiday there. Tyler Kerry from Essex was discovered fatally injured at a hotel in Antalya on Friday morning. His family have released a statement saying he was full of personality, of kindness and compassion, and added that his death has left them completely devastated. More than £5,000 has been fundraised online, given to cover his funeral costs. And just before I hand you back to Nana, well, it wouldn't be a news update without some information on the weather for you. It's been a mild weekend across much of the UK with highs of up to 16 degrees. But I'm sorry to tell you it's about to come to an abrupt end. Temperatures are expected to plunge to as low as -7 in Scotland tomorrow, with frost, ice and freezing fog on the way. The Met Office is warning that rain moving into the west as well throughout the week could turn to snow on higher ground, causing disruption on some routes. Wrap up warm and continue to watch us here on GB News. Those are the latest headlines for now. I'll be back with you in half an hour.
Hello and welcome to GB News. We are live on TV, online and on digital radio. It's just coming up to 8 minutes after 4 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. Those with the broadest shoulders should carry the heaviest burden. So how come MPs earning over £90,000 are being subsidised by the taxpayer? Great work if you can get it. Work and Pensions Cabinet Minister Liz Kendall, the woman who axed the winter fuel payments for pensioners, lives more than comfortably in a £4 million London mansion in very trendy, very expensive Notting Hill. And to add insult to injury, Liz, who resides there with her husband, an ex-Etonian and an investment banker, is allowed to claim costs for the second property that she rents in her Leicester West constituency. And one of those costs is, you guessed it, for energy. Between April 2023 and July this year, she's claimed £3,810, her largest month's bill being £352, which is £52 above the pensioner's winter fuel allowance, which she has scrapped, forcing 100,000 people into poverty. That is according to her own department's forecast, and 4,000 could die as a result, according to her own party's report, which was carried out when the Conservatives were in power. Liz earns £91,000 for her MP salary and £67,000 as a minister, which gives her a salary of £158,000. Not bad. Why on earth should the taxpayer foot the bill for her energy consumption? The utter hypocrisy of this is staggering. MP and leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage, said, "The hypocrisy of the Labour government knows no bounds. I will not be claiming a penny in expenses for my heating." Exactly. He can afford it, and so can she. I don't buy the argument that removing these kind of expenses from MPs won't raise much. Tell that to the farmers whose inheritance tax rate will apparently only bring in a piddly 500 million, and that's if people die. Or the private school raid. Again, the amount raised is a pittance in comparison to the 22 billion or maybe I think it's 40 billion now pound black hole. Let's remind ourselves of what Sir Keir Starmer said.
But I will be honest with you. There is a budget coming in October, and it's going to be painful. We have no other choice, given the situation that we're in. Those with the broadest shoulders should bear the heavier burden.
Well, it's time to lead by example, Sir Keir. Let's start with you lot. Before we get stuck into the debate, here's what else is coming up. Cabinet Minister Liz Kendall, who axed pensioners' winter fuel payments, has her own £350 a month energy bills paid for by, you guessed it, us the taxpayer, whilst she lives in a £4 million London mansion. Then, for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Elon Musk be interfering in British politics? After playing a key role in Donald Trump's victory in America, the Tesla CEO is reportedly planning to hand Nigel Farage $100 million to help him become the next Prime Minister of the UK. We'll also continue with our Great British Debate, and I'll be asking, are Gen Z's MPs lazy? A group of newbie Gen Z MPs are reportedly demanding shorter working hours and a shorter working week as part of efforts to modernise Parliament. And stay tuned for Worldview, joining me, Uri Geller, for the latest from Israel. All of that coming up. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments, gbnews.com/your say. But first, joining me, former Labour MP Stephen Pound. Stephen Pound, nice to see you.
And to see you, Lana.
Very good. Now, listen, am I being unfair?
Sadly, you are being grossly unfair.
Really? You think that Liz Kendall should be claiming expenses for her second home and perhaps that it shouldn't be means-tested?
Let me get a couple of things absolutely straight about this. OK, first of all, this £350 a month figure is for the birds. That was the 1 month, the worst possible month.
But you saw the overall cost.
I know. You divide that up and you come into well under 200.
Well, no, 3,800 up till July, exactly, so it would have been nearer £300 a month.
Let's get another couple of things straight. About this is not her home, and she doesn't claim a penny for her home where she lives, and she lives in certain comfort in Notting Hill, and fair play to her. You know, but this is her second home. Now look, when I was an MP, it was absolutely scandalous. I was a London MP, and I could claim £23,000 a year for a second home, even though I was a London MP. Of course, I didn't. It would have been ludicrous and frankly wrong. But that's been scrapped. Now, if you're an MP, and don't forget, a lot of my friends in Northern Ireland, in Scotland, they have to have a second home. Liz is in Leicester. She has to have a second home, so she's got a modest flat in the street there, a terrace street there in Leicester. Now, look, if you're going to say to people, if you've got a decent house in London, you can't you can't claim for your second one. That is stopping.
Nobody's talking about. Listen, let's get this straight, Stephen.
You're talking about means testing.
I'm talking about means testing them for their expenses when it comes to fuel. I think that they should pay. Maybe we do contribute towards the second home. That's fine, but everything inside that home that you do. So does that mean we should be paying for fuel, food as well? When you get into that house, what cost you incur is down to you. The taxpayer shouldn't be paying for it.
Well, you don't claim for food. You used to. Back in the old days, you could claim for food.
Well, again,
that's been stopped.
And I think that should apply to fuel as well.
Look, let me just get one thing straight. There was MPs, you know, there was a stage, you know, when MPs didn't get a penny, and what happened, and I'm going obviously back to 100 years ago, and what happened then was that working class people could never, ever become MPs. If you're going to say to people, you're going to be means tested, you can't have a second home, that is going to exclude...
Means tested for what expenses that the government will cover? Not for the home. We've accepted that if they live elsewhere and they've got to be in their constituency, we've accepted that the amount of money will go towards that home.
So you take someone like Alistair Carmichael, who's the MP for the Shetland Islands. So what does he do? He works in London and he lives in the Shetland Islands. He has to live in Shetland Islands because that's where his constituency.
Yeah, but you're still going on about the same thing. Listen, Stephen, I'm not talking about us paying the rent for a second home as long as it's reasonable within a certain amount of money. I'm talking about when you're in that house, we shouldn't be paying for your fuel. And that's what she's claiming. She's taken the winter fuel away from the pensioners. And she's means tested that. She is more than able to pay for the fuel in this second home. So when she's in it, she can pay for the fuel when she's in it. I don't see why that should be a problem.
What about all the people who can't who don't have that.
Well, that's why it'll be means tested, won't it? She can afford it. So I think we've covered all bases. We means test the MP. If they're earning a certain amount of money, they've got additional funds, then we don't pay for that.
Can you imagine the bureauclogy? Don't forget,
I'm not worried about the bureaucracy. It's the hypocrisy we're worried about.
You're constantly talking about actually slashing the civil service. You'd have to create a whole new department there. But look, she gets money from her husband. Are we going to deny the fact that her husband earns a few bob?
OK, well, let's talk about benefits which you will only get if you are single. If you're married to someone, their income is often taken into account before you receive any benefits.
It's a joint income.
So once again, she's married to someone who's very rich, so we can do that. I don't see what the problem is.
We call that a joint income.
Well, they're more than happy to do it to us, so I think we should have much more parity.
Well, I mean, in some cases they do, but in this particular case, she's got her second home. She doesn't want to have the second home; she has to have it. But the minute she says that you're not serving her constituents in Leicester, the minute you're not available for that, then there'll be real problems with that. So I honestly, I think we can agree on the main thing. We can agree on the substantive thing that MPs outside London, let's agree on that, can have a second home.
Yeah, we're not talking about that.
No, and we can agree that we should actually pay the basic living expenses,
as in the rent.
On that.
We can put money towards the rent. If they go above that, that's up to them. They can spend more of their own money. But I think it should be much...
are you suggesting that we actually have a local area rent for Leicester or for the Shetland Islands or for Belfast?
Well, they might then try and choose a palatial accommodation.
Well, no,
if they know that it's being fully paid for. I mean, she's got plenty of money. She's still expecting...
And do you know why they wouldn't?
Why?
Because you would shine a light on it.
Well, exactly. but that's the point. But they wouldn't, and they wouldn't do it because of their own integrity and their own conscience. She should know that earning, living in a £4 million mansion in Notting Hill, then having a second home which we all pay for, she could at least pay for the fuel. Nigel Farage is paying for his.
Well, if you've just had a piece on the news about Nigel Farage probably going to pocket $100 million from Elon Musk. He's in a different position there. Look, I think...
that'll be to help him push forward if he hasn't got
Nigel Farage represents a Clacton constituency that is 45 minutes from London. Leicester is a lot further than that.
Yeah, but that's not the point. The point is that when you're in the home, you pay for your energy. We're talking about energy.
Well, and she does, in her home in Notting Hill.
And when you move to your constituency home, which you also live in, you should pay for the energy there.
You can't switch it off at one home and switch it on at the other as you move between. Well, can you imagine?
I switch off my heating when I'm not in my house.
Yeah, but you still have to pay your council tax, you have to pay your standing charges, you still have to pay your regular charges.
And she can afford it. So listen, this is just like the pensioners. They still have to pay all of those things, and she's taken away the winter fuel allowance. If you can understand from their perspective, then you must understand.
But we've been around the houses on this a few times. That as far as the winter fuel allowance, not paying it to the King and to people like me and to people like Liz Kendall makes a lot of sense, because don't forget, even pensioners, and I'm a pensioner, I want to see more police on the street. I want to see the NHS, and I want to see that money being directed where it's not to millionaires and the royal family.
Well, there you go. So that's how we feel about Liz Kendall. People earning enough money to pay for their own fuel. It shouldn't be encompassed within the MP's
I'm getting the message.
It shouldn't be. Stephen Pound, really good to talk to you as her former Labour MP, Stephen Pound. Well, earlier, GBNews spoke to the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, about this. Have a listen.
It has been an absolutely disastrous start to the Labour administration, hasn't it?
Not at all. We've had a good increase in the minimum wage.
McFadden.
We've had more help for carers. We've had a freeze in the fuel duty. We've protected the pay slips of people as we said we would in our manifesto. We've had a lot to sort out. You're right. Had to sort out a collapsing prison system. We're having to start to get the NHS waiting list down. We've got legislation going through on transport that we talked about earlier. We've got a big agenda, and this week we're going to take that forward with a new plan for change.
Oh, come on, Pat. It's been a disaster, really, seriously. Well, listen, joining me now, the founder of the Pensioner Vote, David Pinless. David, thank you very much for joining me. Look, I made the point that I felt that the winter fuel allowance, I think, is wrong to take it away from pensioners and to means test them, fair enough if you're going to do that, but not to start at such a low bar. But let's talk about the MPs. I mean, I think they should be means tested for their expenses when it comes to heating.
Well, absolutely, Nana, and thank you very much for having me, by the way. I read that Liz Kendall, Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, is actually claiming £350, up to £350 a month for her second home in her Leicester West constituency. Your previous guest, by the way, said that she needs a second home. I read that she's renting it out, so I don't see how she can be actually needed it, Just a comment there. Now, Liz Kendall voted to scrap the winter fuel payment for up to £300 per annum for pensioners. I also note, by the way, Nana, she voted for the assisted dying bill. Quite frankly, I don't know why she bothered, because she voted for assisted dying when she voted to scrap the winter fuel payment. And that's according to Labour's own research. Prior to the general election, Labour did some research which said that 4,000 pensioners might die if the winter fuel payment is scrapped. And subsequently, it's been shown that about 100,000 pensioners are going to go into poverty because of the scrapping of the winter fuel payment. So personally, I find her actions morally reprehensible. And quite frankly, I think it's a resigning matter. The optics are really very bad, aren't they? I mean, I don't know if she employs advisors or not, but if she does, they're not doing a very good job, are they? Compare, for example, her behaviour to that of Rupert Lowe. Rupert Lowe, the excellent MP who donates his monthly MP salary to local charities. Now, she is not abiding by the spirit of the rules. She may not have broken them. And even Pat McFadden, who you had on just a moment ago, I believe he has a second home next door to where he's living, which he rents out and claims money for from the taxpayer. So, you know, it's one rule for them and one rule for us. And politics is all about choices, and Labour have chosen, for example, to spend £11.5 billion on overseas climate aid. I think I may just have blocked your camera out there. No, I've got you back, sorry. Labour have chosen to spend £11.5 billion on overseas climate aid. They're only going to recoup £1.5 billion from pensioners. What kind of choice is that? You know, our members at the pensionervote.com, they're writing with their stories. One lady called Evelyn, who's aged 78, said she'd be better off if she took a Eurostar train to France and came back on a dinghy, where she could be put up in an asylum hotel, given first-class accommodation and have her food paid for. And she has a point, doesn't she? Yeah. She's not the only one. We have stories about pensioners who sleep with their pets to keep warm, who are worried about their veterinary bills, who are worried about pipes freezing. So clearly, this behaviour by Liz Kendall is deeply unacceptable.
All right, David, thank you so much. That's David Pinleston. He is a founder of the Pensioner Vote. Thank you very much. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Next, it's time for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Elon Musk be interfering in British politics?
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
The BBC has been branded jaw-achingly stupid, not by me, by the way, over its decision to cast black and ethnic minority actors in the historical drama of Wharf Hall. Now, is this a forward-thinking idea or nonsense? And are we rewriting history? Henry, I mean, the Tudors were real-life people. They were pretty much white.
Well, some of these shows depart so much from historical context anyway that maybe it doesn't make any difference. But I think just generally, we've got a problem in this country with portraying history in its correct sense. You can't change history. And I think it's about the motivation. If the motivation is to sort of, to some sort of, you know, to make a political point, then I think it's wrong.
What I find kind of tedious about people finding this instant jaw-droppingly stupid, Jesus was portrayed by somebody who's half Slovak and half Irish. Moses was portrayed in the Exodus by an Englishman. So, you know, same with Anne Boleyn, you know, was portrayed by Natalie Portman, who is Jewish. So if this is the one thing that's getting people angry, then there's something deeper within that rage, because I think Hollywood's been doing that, where people...
When you say something deeper, do you think there is a hidden racism and people are complaining about this?
Well, I think for some, maybe yes. I can't speak for everybody because you know, this news dropped today. I don't know why they are thinking that it's egregious, but there absolutely must be some underlying racism if this is the only one that you're upset about.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day.
bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Well, stay with me, because at 5 o'clock, Elon Musk will be live here on GB News. That's Elon Musk's dad. We'll be having a chat with him. But I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We are live on TV, online, on digital radio. It's time now for the Great British Debate this hour. I'm asking, should Elon Musk be interfering in British politics? After playing a key role in the Donald Trump recent election victory in America, rumours are now flying around that Elon Musk is set to hand Nigel Farage $100 million to help make him the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom and punish Sir Keir Starmer. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, should Elon Musk be interfering in British politics? Well, joining me now, my panel, Chairman of the Global Britain Centre, Aman Bogle, and also co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. I'll start with you. What do you think? Elon Musk, is he interfering in British politics by offering to spend £100,000?
No, I think Elon Musk is one of the greats of our age.
100 million, sorry, not even 100,000. That will get you.
100 million. Well, but let's not forget, he's also a great investor in the United Kingdom. And if he's investing money into the UK, creating jobs, bringing in industry and employment, then surely he has a stake to help contribute to our democracy. And of course, the decision, whether it's right or wrong, should stay with the people at the ballot box.
Well, some people might call it election interfering. Aaron Bastani.
So, as the law stands at the moment, the Electoral Commission does not permit somebody from outside the UK who's not a UK national to give money, say, to this extent, £100 million. So, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen through X, of course. There is a company in the UK, it's registered here, and it would be channelled through there. I suspect the Electoral Commission would block it.
Really?
£100 million. It's not $500,000, it's not $1 million, it's £100 million. I mean, that would completely reconfigure British politics. I personally have a problem with it. I think you should be a British taxpayer or a UK national if you want to donate to a British political party, which is the case in the US. Like I say, that is formally also true here, but he can use this loophole of using his company. If it was 1 or 2 million, we could have a nice academic debate about it. But 100 million is just...
What about 10 instalments of 10 million, you know, slowly?
100 million, I mean, that would blow away the two major parties in terms of funding.
But at the same time, let's be honest, all political parties have funding that gets funneled into the UK somehow or the other. I mean, there's all sorts of ways, but at least this is upfront and honest. Elon Musk is saying, well, it's being rumoured rather, but what's wrong with it? Why shouldn't someone be able to, especially with British interests, if he is creating jobs and industry here, why shouldn't that company be able to support a political party? Not least of all, are we really saying that British people can't make their decision? They are the last arbiter of what's right and wrong, after all.
But some people might see it akin to election interfering, though, you know, because it could appear that way. Especially seeing as he also controls and has control of a social media platform like X. If the Russians were doing it, it would be seen as interference. So what's the difference?
OK, so, well, then I think it's time to have a larger, wider debate, a national debate on who owns and runs our media houses, our newspapers, dare I say, our broadcasting companies. Because you'll find that a lot of that money is coming in from the Middle East, and they're not bastions of free speech like Elon Musk is.
I'm so glad he's stepping in. I mean, I'm sick and tired. Nobody seems to be able to deal with Sir Keir Starmer because he's got this massive majority. So somebody who's got a global reach that can start to try and manipulate things a little bit, I'm quite happy with it.
Well, I think
they agree with me.
Here's what's interesting. I think Keir Starmer is imploding regardless. You have the Zia... It makes you wonder what 100 million would do. But Zia Yusuf is the big reform funder, and I think he gave $500,000, I think, is his single biggest donation. And in a way, you know, sometimes in organisations, too much money at once can be a bad thing. It genuinely can be a bad thing. It's poorly spent. You scale up all kinds of things which in the long term are unsustainable. I suspect, actually, The way that reform is going right now is probably a smarter way of proceeding. And I'd also say, look, with regards to media, true, but we've also had effectively a Gulf state trying to buy the Telegraph. That's been spiked for precisely the arguments that are being made here, because those people won't necessarily have the best interest of this country at heart. So, look, you might agree with Elon Musk. You might think he's a good person. You might think he's, a great variable in shifting politics in a good direction. But I think we just said, if it was a Russian or a Chinese person or a German or an Italian, I think people would say, well, look, hold on. You have your country. Shape the politics of that country. Leave us alone.
Well, ultimately, if X has British holdings, then if it's a British registered company, I see no reason why they shouldn't be able to. The same would apply, I would argue, to companies of other origins. If they have British holdings, British interests, they're creating British jobs, have British directors, well, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, he could do that, couldn't he? Get around it by doing that.
I think if it's a lower figure, possibly. I think the Electoral Commission would not allow 100 million. I'll just quickly say this as well. With the Stop Brexit stuff, you had people like George Soros giving millions of pounds to those campaigns in this country. He's, a US national, Hungarian-born. That was appalling, by the way. And if you mention that, people say this is a dog whistle. Well, it's bad. It doesn't matter who the guy is or where he comes from or his background ethnically. It's bad. And I do think some of the sort of liberal commentariat, they have made a rod for their own back here, because the sorts of stuff they're criticising with Elon Musk is precisely the stuff that was funding lots of the Stop Brexit stuff prior to 2019.
I'm presuming you didn't vote for Brexit, you voted the other way?
I was pro-Brexit until the final 6 weeks, and then I voted Remain on the day, because I was worried that if we leave the single market as well as leaving the EU all in one go, it's going to be very messy and it's going to take decades to resolve, and I don't like to be right, but I think that's basically what's going to happen.
I mean, I campaign as part of the Vote Leave team, always for regaining British independence and freedom. But as you said, Aaron, we've had the situation with the Soros Foundation, with the Ford Foundation, and a plethora of other left-leaning foreign interference we've had. So maybe it's about time that we balance that out a bit with someone like Musk, bringing in the right money for freedom of speech, and ultimately let the people decide.
Yeah, let the people decide. They decided on Keir Starmer, and look how well that went. Well, coming up, stay tuned, because Elon Musk's dad, Errol, will be joining me in about half an hour's time. You will not want to miss that. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Coming up, Worldview. Joining me, Uri Geller, for the latest from Israel. But first, let's get your latest news headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you from the newsroom, fast approaching 33 minutes past 4. And the top story today, the number of migrants crossing the English Channel under the leadership of Sir Keir Starmer has now hit a new milestone, over 20,000 arrivals since Labour took office in July. The latest arrived today as Border Force intercepted 2 boats carrying around 100 people. That marked the first crossings in nearly 2 weeks. It brings this year's total to just under 34,000, already surpassing last year's figure of 29,500. And it comes as Labour prepares to unveil its new migration plan, though that will be without a target on reducing the numbers. The Prime Minister is set to launch Labour's most ambitious plan for change yet, he says, promising to hit key targets on the economy, on energy, the NHS and on early education, all before the next election. Whitehall is in for a shake-up with a new Cabinet Secretary tasked with transforming government into a machine focused on delivery. Sir Keir Starmer, though, warns managed decline has seeped into government, but says this is now a turning point for the country's future. Though with approval ratings dropping to just 22%, questions are now growing over whether he can really convince the public. Meanwhile, Labour's governing body is also eyeing changes that could reshape the powers of regional mayors. Greg Wallace has hit back at claims of misconduct, accusing middle-class women of a certain age, he says, of driving the allegations against him. The MasterChef presenter stepped down on Thursday this week as accusations of inappropriate comments emerged and are now being investigated. The TV star Kirsty Allsop is among those sharing allegations, saying she was so embarrassed she thought she might cry after Wallace allegedly made a comment to her about his sex life. Greg Wallace, though, denies the allegations, saying he has worked with thousands of contestants throughout his career and has nothing to hide. 2 teenagers have been charged following a suspected chemical attack at a Surbiton station in southwest London on Friday. The 14 and 16-year-olds, who can't be named for legal reasons, are both accused of possessing a corrosive substance in a public place. Officers approached the boys at around 4:20 p.m. and were exposed to an alkaline substance, with 2 taken to hospital, though they have since been discharged. 7 others, including 2 from the Metropolitan Police Force, were also checked by paramedics. The teenagers are set to appear at Wimbledon Magistrates Court tomorrow. And just bringing you a line from the Isle of Wight this hour. A man in his 40s is believed to have died after his car sadly plunged into the sea off of the island. Police arrived at the scene of that incident just before 11:30 on Saturday morning, where they found the Ford Mondeo submerged in the water. Despite efforts to save him, reports suggest that the driver from Ryde was pronounced dead at the scene. An investigation is now underway, with both Hampshire and Isle of Wight constabularies appealing for any witnesses. So that news just into us from the Isle of Wight, that a man in his 40s has sadly died after his car plunged into the sea. Well, those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup at the top of the hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon, welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of blustery showers continuing through the rest of today, but we should see some clear spells overnight, and with some northerly winds on the way, it will be turning colder as we head in towards the new working week. This area of low pressure up to the north of the UK pushes away towards Scandinavia, leaving us northerly winds across all of the UK as we head through Monday. But back to Sunday evening, plenty of showers around. This band of showers across central areas pushes its way eastwards, turning particularly heavy over any high ground. But across southern areas, there should be some clear spells around between those showers, but it will still be quite a mild night compared to what we've seen recently. Temperatures in the south around 6, 7, perhaps 8 degrees, although with some northerly winds across parts of Scotland turning chillier here, perhaps a frost to start the day in places. For northern areas, it will be quite a cloudy start to the day on Monday. Across parts of Scotland, those showers that we see overnight turning increasingly to sleet and snow, particularly over the hills, so definitely feeling a bit of a chillier start here. Across Northern Ireland, we will still see some showers around through the morning, but these likely to be falling as rain. The further south you are, perhaps some sunshine to start the day. Across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day, but for Wales, southern eastern parts of England, perhaps a bit of a brighter start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine as we head through the morning. That band of showers across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards, bringing some quite brisk northerly winds across the eastern coast, so really feeling quite chilly here. But the further west you are, there should be some sunshine as we head through the afternoon. Plenty of blue skies around, even if we do see 1 or 2 showers, and the showers continuing to fall as sleet and snow across Scotland, and widely a much cooler day compared to the weekend. Temperatures generally closer to average, around 10 or 11 in the south and only 5 or 6 further north. Those brisk northerly winds continuing across eastern coast as we head through Monday evening, but for many of us it will be turning dry with plenty of clear spells, so that will lead to quite a chilly start on Tuesday, but wet weather is on the way through Tuesday afternoon and into Wednesday, and those temperatures slowly increasing as we head towards the second half of the week.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome. Nana Akua is here. not where have you been? This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. It's just gone 38 minutes after 4 o'clock. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. But first, during Advent, as we count down to Christmas Day, we're hearing from church ministers across the country, and each day they have a special message for you to celebrate the festive season. Here's our first one.
The GB News Advent Calendar. Day 1.
Hi, I'm Chris Tufnell. I'm the vicar of Uterbridge Parish Church near Sheffield. On Christmas Day 1997, I opened a present. It was a book, and on the cover was a picture of a train, a boy with a scar on his head, and a sign saying platform 9 3/4. It was, of course, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, the first in the major series. But I remember thinking, it'll never catch on. And so it stayed on my shelf gathering dust for years. People told me I should read it, but I didn't. Until I realized this Harry Potter thing was getting really quite big now. And so I opened the cover, began to read, and sure enough, I was soon hooked. I think it's all too easy for us to do the same with the story of the person Christmas is all about, Jesus Christ. It's clear his story has caught on, it's shaped the Western world and given us the values we cherish so much at Christmas. Most people have heard something about him, but few have actually read the story for themselves. If that's you, might it be time that you did? Happy Christmas.
Oh, isn't that lovely? We'll be going all around the country, and you can see all of our special Advent messages as Christmas approaches by visiting gbnews.com/advert and Advent, a Merry Christmas. Don't try and open some of the doors before the days, though, because it's wrong. Right, no, it's time now for the Great British Debate this hour, and I'm asking, are Gen Z MPs lazy? New MPs have reportedly asked that Parliament's working hours be cut to 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. and the working week be cut to just 3 days a week. But by that, I think they mean they want to work in their constituencies the other days. So for the Great British Debate this hour, I'm asking, are they just simply lazy? Joining me now, my panel, Chairman of the Global Britain Centre, Amal Bogle, also co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Aaron Bastani, we'll start with you.
Well, I think generally MPs are lazy. When I hear them say we're not paid enough, I just get really frustrated. One might say that they should be paid more because, of course, people are coming from a range of jobs which often pay more, but you're going to have to work for it. And right now, I think Parliament sits about 160 days a year. So in your mind's eye, you're thinking they're in Parliament. Well, that's actually not even the majority of the days of the year. Good MPs work really hard in their constituencies. They do the casework, like we saw, for instance, with the Horizon scandal that was led on by a really outstanding Tory MP. Bad MPs don't bother. And obviously, because of our electoral system, you have safe seats, and there are cases of just people who doss around for decades, not doing very much. They vote the way they're told. They don't do very much casework in their constituency. That should not exist. So the idea that people like that should have their lives made even easier, I find absurd. The Times thing, I mean, I'd have to see more detail on it. I think 10 to 4 doesn't really sound like a work day to most people. I appreciate people have childcare issues and so on, but when you're on £93,000 or £91,000 a year minimum, you can kind of deal with that. So I would take it a bit wider, Nana. I'd say it's not just Gen Z MPs, it's not just new MPs. It's all of them. It's all of them. Very lazy.
It sounds like they're demanding to work from home, really. They want to go back to their constituencies and spend more time there. That would be great if they actually did the work. But
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, you've had some really good backbench MPs, hard-working constituency MPs who everyone knows. You know, people like the late Sir David Ames. You knock on any door in his constituency and people would know who he is because he's probably done something for them. But a lot of them, well, they want to work from home, like most of the civil service does.
Yeah, and that lot
I mean,
lazy.
look at the great blob at the Home Office.
I mean, it's terrible, isn't it?
I think Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg was in charge of getting them all back on desks, and even he failed. And that's what these lot want to do. I mean, let's be honest. They get £90,000 a year. They get subsidised booze. They get and food, and they get heating bills paid for. Expenses. And, of course, they also get about 6 assistants each, both in the constituency office and in Parliament itself. So if they can't get their act together with all of these resources around them helping them, then what on earth are they there for? This is a matter of why are you in this game for? what are you here for? You know, is this a matter of commitment to public service, to serving the people, to representing them, or is it to line your pockets and save seats? And again, it all boils down to candidate selection.
Well, I went to the Houses of Parliament a couple of weeks ago. I went to watch Prime Minister's questions. And, well, there were no answers. It was just simply questions. Nobody really answered any of the questions. And I sort of thought to myself, crikey, this is almost like a bit of a jolly. They're all sort of here, and then you go to the nice subsidised thing and you eat something nice and you go on the balcony and then people are drinking and there's bars that are open very, very late. And I get, actually, it would be better if they did stuff, because I was wondering, what happens now? What do they do during the day there? They debate a few things. There's no results for anything. I just felt like it was a bit of a waste of time. It's like a pantomime.
Well, you know, there's a gentleman called Ralph Miliband, who's Ed Miliband's father. And this is going to be unusual, perhaps, on a Sunday on GB News, but the guy was a Marxist. And he had a critique of the Westminster system. Literally, the building, how it looks, how it works, is that people are sent there as representatives of constituencies. But the minute you see the grandeur of the building, it is incredibly alluring. And you have people going there with the best intentions in the world. They see the opulence, they see the beautiful building, like you say, subsidised wine, subsidised gorgeous food. Doesn't take very long. After a couple of months, it switches off. You know what? The taxpayer should pay my energy bill. So I think that's part of it. We need a broader critique, actually, of why people are in politics, why people are in Parliament, and what skill sets. You know, if you're an MP, you have, like you just said, maybe 6 to a dozen people working underneath you. In defence of these MPs, many of them have got zero experience of managing people. You're probably not going to be very good at running a parliamentary office.
Well, listen, this show's nothing without you and your views. Let's welcome our great British voices, their opportunity to be on the show and tell us what they think about the topics we're discussing. Adrian Gell is there in Shropshire. Adrian, welcome to the programme. What do you think? Are some of these Gen Z MPs lazy? Or overall, do you find that it's a bit wasteful in Parliament?
Well, I think they're bone idle, to be perfectly honest. You know, and if I'm right in thinking that, you know, they're even trying to promote through parliamentary committees at the moment that they can do less work in Parliament. When I was a nipper, most MPs, in fact, all MPs, had some experience in life and they had to offer something. If you didn't have any experience and you were pretty useless, you ended up in the insurance world. Well, that seems to be the case with members of Parliament now.
Well, that was definitely the case for, what's her name, Louise Haigh. She ended up in that, didn't she? And she sort of messed that up royally.
I couldn't agree more. But by being an MP, it's all about the me, me, me culture. None of them have any experience. They've all been taught by members of the socialist teaching unions, so they have nothing other than themselves to think about. So they are. They're absolutely. Yeah, they've got nothing to offer. You take William Pitt the Younger, okay, in the turn of the 18th century. He was 24 when he became Prime Minister. But at the same time, he had a proper education. He was properly educated. He had his father to look up to, and he spent a lot of time in Parliament anyway as a child. But these MPs now, they have no experience in life whatsoever.
Adrian Gell, Adrian Gell, it's always a pleasure. So many great stories. But we have to go. Adrian Gell, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
He's my great British voice. He's there in Shropshire. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. Welcome. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Coming up after the break, Worldview, bring you the latest from Israel. Stay with me.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes. Thank you for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight, every night from 11 p.m.
The Daily Mail now, Josh, and pub landlords have to worry about more than the optics when it comes to offensive banter, it seems.
This is a really big story and important. Pub landlords could have to become banter cops to stop themselves being sued by staff offended by comments from customers under workers' rights reform. So, Labour, when they were part of their election process, they were like, we're going to reform workers' rights, and that all sounds good on paper, but there were issues in terms of how might it affect employees and fear from employees costing them more money. One of these things that they're sort of pushing through, though, is that in the Equality Act of 2010, part of the issue was that if you were offended at work or someone said something sexist or racist, something that affected you, the employer had to take some sort of, like, they had three chances to kind of take action.
Yeah.
Now, the employer has to should have taken action already. So employees can sue employers. Now, this has a big impact on us because we're comics and we perform in venues. And if some of the bar staff hear a joke that they don't like, then they can sue their employer, potentially, under this legislation.
So it's not punters?
Well, also, it could be like you're at a bar and some bloke is like, oh, I like that top, or whatever. That's not good behaviour. But the point is now that employee could sue their employer.
So, because, I mean, the sort of scenario I was imagining was that a barmaid was being maybe sexually harassed or
That's
something.
what they're focusing in this article, but other articles have gone down the free speech route. Okay. And also venues and universities having lectures. We saw it at, in Edinburgh Fringe Festival and Sadowitz. He had a show cancelled not because of any punters, but because two of the 18-year-olds were working. They were upset.
There was a bar in Brighton, wasn't there? There was a story we covered a few weeks ago. A bar in Brighton threw some people out. Because
exactly. They had turfs on the...
turfs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Isabel Webster. Thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, this is GB News. It's time now for World View. Let's get the latest from around the world. Let's travel over to Tel Aviv and speak to performer and mystifier Uri Geller for the latest in Israel. Uri, lovely to see you. What's on your mind?
Okay, first of all, it's so great to be on your show every week. Fantastic. Look, Nana, I want to show you something. Look at my phone. Look carefully. Why am I showing this? Because for over a year, I was getting rocket alerts day and night, warning me that we're under fire from Hezbollah. The screen was red with rocket warning. Now, for the first time, it has stopped. This week, Israel and Hezbollah agreed to a ceasefire, as you all know, after 13 months of war. 13 months of war. It is good for Israel and it is good for Lebanon. The Lebanese have suffered enough. And by the way, Nana, they hate Hezbollah. The Lebanese hate Hezbollah. It is good for Israel because more than 60,000 people were forced from their homes. Now they must be able to go back home. But now, let me tell you who has lost here. And that is Hezbollah and Iran. Don't forget, Hezbollah is Iran's creation. Iran thought it could destroy Israel by using Hezbollah to attack it from the north and from the south. And look, Nana, I don't know if you have heard, please allow me to say this, if you've heard the expression FAFO. I won't say it because it is the EFF word, as we all know. But it means EFF around, find out. Well, Iran effed around with Israel, and they found out. Do you remember this guy? Do you remember his name? At the start of this war, Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah, wagged his finger and threatened to destroy our cities. He said he would blow up Tel Aviv and Haifa also, and even hit our nuclear site in Dimona, our nuclear site. But look what we did. We dropped a massive bomb on Nasrallah's head. Perfect pinpoint precision. We killed and crippled thousands of Hezbollah terrorists by blowing up their pagers, if you remember. We killed all of Hezbollah's commanders, and whoever was left, they just ran away. By the end, Hezbollah was begging for a ceasefire. Israel shocked the world with what we were able to do. This is how, Nana, you deal with terrorists. No deals, no negotiations. If you attack us, we will kill you. No more terrorism can only mean a good future for the Lebanese and the Palestinians, and of course the Israelis.
Absolutely.
Nana, it's so fantastic to be with you every week. I love you all, and positive energy to all the viewers of GB News.
All right, lovely. Uri Geller, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. That is
Thank you.
Uri Geller. He's live there in Tel Aviv. Well, you're with me. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. Those are his thoughts, and his thoughts alone. Stay tuned, though, because we're live on TV, online, and on digital radio. Coming up, Elon Musk's dad, Errol Musk, joins me next. I'll be asking him about the rumours that his billionaire's son will donate $100 million to Nigel Farage.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of blustery showers continuing through the rest of today, but we should see some clear spells overnight. And with some northerly winds on the way, it will be turning colder as we head in towards the new working week. This area of low pressure up to the north of the UK pushes away towards Scandinavia, leaving us northerly winds across all of the UK as we head through Monday. But back to Sunday evening, plenty of showers around. This band of showers across central areas pushes its way eastwards, turning particularly heavy over any high ground. But across southern areas, there should be some clear spells around between those showers, but it will still be quite a mild night compared to what we've seen recently. Temperatures in the south around 6, 7, perhaps 8 degrees, although with some northerly winds across parts of Scotland turning chillier here, perhaps a frost to start the day in places. For northern areas, it will be quite a cloudy start to the day on Monday. Across parts of Scotland, those showers that we see overnight turning increasingly to sleet and snow, particularly over the hills, so definitely feeling a bit of a chillier start here. Across Northern Ireland, we will still see some showers around through the morning, but these likely to be falling as rain. The further south you are, perhaps some sunshine to start the day. Across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day, but for Wales, southern eastern parts of England, perhaps a bit of a brighter start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine as we head through the morning. That band of showers across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards, bringing some quite brisk northerly winds across the eastern coast, so really feeling quite chilly here. But the further west you are, there should be some sunshine as we head through the afternoon. Plenty of blue skies around, even if we do see 1 or 2 showers, and the showers continuing to fall as sleet and snow across Scotland, and widely a much cooler day compared to the weekend. Temperatures generally closer to average, around 10 or 11 in the south and only 5 or 6 further north. Those brisk northerly winds continuing across eastern coast as we head through Monday evening, but for many of us it will be turning dry with plenty of clear spells, so that will lead to quite a chilly start on Tuesday, but wet weather is on the way through Tuesday afternoon and into Wednesday, and those temperatures slowly increasing as we head towards the second half of the week.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a...
You could be joining the Great British Giveaway list of winners with your chance to grab a fantastic £50,000 in tax-free cash. We've made loads of winners this year, and you could be our next.
Hi, I'm Angela from Wigan, and I won £30,000 with the Great British Giveaway. It happens to people like me.
For your chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. You can call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB10 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 31st of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Go to gbnews.com/shop now and take advantage of our biggest ever Black Friday sale with 25% off all items across our store and free shipping on orders worth £60 or more. There's never been a better time to grab something for the GB News fan in your life. From our signature clothing to drinkware, gifts, accessories and much, much more, you'll find the perfect present this festive season. Use the code BLACKFRIDAY25 on checkout at gbnews.com/shop for our best ever Black Friday deals.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date.
Or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, hello and welcome to GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and for the next few hours, or next hour even, me and my panel will be taking on some of the big topics hitting the headlines right now. This show is all about opinion. It's mine, it's theirs, and of course it is yours. We'll be debating, discussing, and at times we will disagree, but no one will be cancelled. So joining me for this hour, Chairman of the Global Britain Centre, Aman Bogle. Yes, keep up, Aman, even now I'm getting it wrong now. And co-founder of Novara Media, Aaron Bastani. Well, in my niggle, I took on Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall. You can catch it online if you missed it. She's a woman who acts the winter fuel payments for pensioners, and she lives in, well, very comfortably in a £4 million London mansion with us taxpayers footing the bill for a second home. I've got a poll up on X asking you whether we should mean test MPs for expenses. Then, Elon Musk, should he really be interfering in British politics? It's been rumoured that the billionaire is planning to give Nigel Farage's Reform UK party a huge cash injection in a bid to reshape British politics. So in a couple of moments' time, I'll be speaking to his dad, Errol Musk, for the latest. Then in the interview, joining me, Stephen King, or Stephen Less even. He is the knight... It's all going wrong. 40 years of experience in the leisure industry, operating nearly 50 bars and restaurants in London. He will be joining me. All of that coming up. But what's going on here?
Oh, guess what I've done? Made a proper error doing this again, Nana.
But what did he do? But before we get started, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Nana, thank you, and very good evening to you. Fast approaching 2 minutes past 5. Top story tonight, well, the number of migrants crossing the English Channel under the leadership of Sir Keir Starmer has, we can now reveal and confirm, hit a new milestone with over 20,000 arrivals since Labour took office in July. The latest figures came today as the Border Force intercepted 2 more boats carrying around 100 people, marking the first crossings in nearly 2 weeks. It brings this year's total to just under 34,000, already surpassing 2023's figure of 29,500. It also comes as Labour's preparing to unveil its new migration plan, but without a target on reducing those numbers. The assisted dying bill is facing fresh challenges as some MPs who backed the vote this week are hinting they may reconsider their stance. Concerns over palliative care and safeguarding have sparked debate, with MPs set to propose amendments when the bill moves to its committee stage. The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, warned us here on GB News that there is still a long road ahead.
Now that Parliament's voted on that on Friday, it will go into committee. It will be considered in much more detail now, like every other piece of legislation, and it should be because it's such a serious issue. And the House of Commons will have to vote on it again in a few months' time. So this bill, this big and serious measure, will be properly and fully considered clause by clause now. as it should be. And even though we had the vote on Friday, I still think there's probably a long way to go before this becomes law.
Pat McFadden there speaking to us earlier on GB News. Well, he also suggested there could be questions over the costs of the assisted dying bill in the next phase of the debate. Meanwhile, Conservatives' Victoria Adkins, who voted in favour of the bill, says it is important to keep the conversation going.
We saw across the House, from both those who voted aye, but also those who voted no, there was, for example, a real wish to see conversations about palliative care and the quality of palliative care continue. I think we also saw many heartbreaking examples. And there'll be, viewers at home that have been personally affected by this, where they just want to see whether the law can get into a better place than it is at the moment.
Turning to news in Belfast, where a police investigation is now underway after the sudden death of a woman in her 20s at a nightclub in the city. Emergency services there were called in the early hours of this morning after reports that 2 women had fallen unconscious. One of those women was sadly found dead at the scene, while the other remains in hospital receiving treatment. Officers are now urging anyone with information to come forward as their inquiries continue. Russia's new defence budget, described as the most secretive since the Soviet era, has sparked fresh warnings, with a third of that budget being kept under wraps. President Vladimir Putin has just signed off a huge 25% increase, pushing military spending in Russia to nearly a third of its entire budget. That's £99.5 billion funnelled into defence as the war in Ukraine continues to drain Russian resources. It also comes as sanctions on Gazprom Bank, that's Russia's oil and gas payment hub, have sent the ruble plunging to record lows against the dollar. Here, police are hunting a man caught on camera in London performing a Nazi salute during a pro-Palestine protest in the capital. The gesture was made near counter-protests waving Israeli flags as tensions flared by Piccadilly Circus yesterday. Rival groups traded abuse at Coventry Street, separated by metal barriers and a wall of officers. The Met Police Force is appealing for any information and calling the act a potential public order offence. Counter-protesters have said the incident shows why British Jews feel unsafe in the capital. Well, let's just bring you a breaking update from Wales this hour. We're hearing that dozens of homes there have been evacuated after a large sinkhole up to 60 feet deep appeared at the bottom of a local resident's driveway in Merthyr Tydfil. Residents there say they heard rumbling and collapsing overnight, fearing their homes could be swallowed up by that sinkhole. It's believed to have been triggered by a collapsed culvert just days after Storm Bert's heavy rain and flooding in the area. We're hearing that South Wales Police and fire and rescue crews are now on site, with authorities warning people to stay away as more rain is threatening to make that situation worse. A 20-year-old British man has died after an unexplained fall into a lift shaft while on holiday in Turkey. Tyler Kerry from Essex was discovered fatally injured at a hotel in Antalya on Friday morning. His family say he was full of personality, kindness and compassion, adding that his death has left them completely devastated. More than £5,000 has already been fundraised to help cover his funeral costs. And let's bring you an update on the weather. Well, it has been a mild weekend across much of the UK, highs of up to 16 degrees for some, but sadly it is about to come to an abrupt end. Temperatures are expected to plunge to as low as -7 in some areas in Scotland tomorrow, with frost, ice and freezing fog on the way. The Met Office is also warning that rain moving in from the west into the rest of this week could turn to snow on higher ground, causing disruption on some routes. I'm sure plenty of children will be happy at the news of snow, though. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'll be back with you for another roundup in around half an hour's time.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. Look at this fabulous set. Isn't it amazing? All Christmassy. Well, if you just tuned in, welcome. It's just coming up to 8 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We are Britain's news channel. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua. Now, coming up, as rumours begin to fly that Elon Musk is preparing to give Nigel Farage a $100 million war chest to become the next Prime Minister, I'll be speaking to the Tesla CEO's father, Elon Musk, to see if there is any credibility in these reports. Then Cabinet Minister Liz Kendall, who acts pensioners' winter fuel payments, has her own £350 a month energy bills paid for by, you guessed it, us, the taxpayer, while she lives in a £4 million London mansion. Of course, that's for her second home. So I've been asking, should we means test MPs for expenses? There's a poll up on X asking that very question. Do you think that perhaps she's a hypocrite? In the interview as well, that is on the way. I'll be speaking to the nightclub king, Stephen Less. He has over 40 years' experience in the leisure industry, operating nearly 50 bars and restaurants in London. And for the Great British Debate, I'm asking, do you think the treatment of Greg Wallace is fair? This obviously comes as the now former MasterChef host hits out at those who have accused him of historical misconduct, describing them as a handful of middle-class women of a certain age. Oh, Greg, talk about making it worse for yourself. All of that on the way. As ever, send me your thoughts, post your comments at gbnews.com/your say. So after playing a key role in Donald Trump's recent election victory in America, Elon Musk is now reportedly turning his attention to the United Kingdom and could be set to hand Nigel Farage $100 million to help him make become the next Prime Minister of the UK and punish Sir Keir Starmer. The Tesla CEO has made no secret of his dislike for Keir Starmer, dubbing him as to take care over claims that the UK police treat some groups more harshly than others. So who better to discuss this with than Elon Musk's father, Errol. Errol, thank you so much for joining me. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you very much. Wow.
Pleasure.
So, OK, so I'm going to start with the rumours. What do you make of these rumours that Elon Musk could donate $100 million to assist Nigel Farage and the Reform UK Party? Do you think there's any credence to those?
Well, you know, I heard about it today myself. Look, I think it's a good idea. If it's not something he's not allowed to do, I would say as a private person, maybe he's allowed to do that, you know. I'm eligible for British citizenship, so is he, I suppose. But, you know, I think he would have to make sure he's not doing something that, you know, is not good. You know, he must do the right thing. I think, though, that the thing that's stopping Farage from moving ahead is money, then he should get money so that he can move ahead. Yes.
So some people might sort of see it as the election interference, although, as you said, you probably both will qualify for to be British anyway. But the one thing, because I know that you know, there were points where you guys didn't get on as well, but on this you're united. And you recently made some comments about Sir Keir Starmer and warned that this country is heading towards an abyss if he stays in power. Can you sort of tell me a bit more about your thoughts on that?
Well, yes, you know, it's really not complicated. You know, England is not a little principality in Europe called Zenda. And the people in jail are not prisoners of Zenda. They are English people, people who have always stood up for the rights of people outside of England who've been, you know, victimized in the same way. I think that what's happened in England is just totally un-English. All your people out of England, people like myself, we all see England as a parent country. We look to England for guidance. We think about what the English would have done. Half the most famous people in the last few hundred years at least came from England. So you look at England and you say, well, if that's happening in England, well, where does that put us? You know, we've always looked to England for example, not for a bad example. And what we're seeing there now is nothing but a bad example. And a man who's now in a position as Prime Minister and his cabinet, I suppose, who seem to have a very contrary British attitude in every way. Day by day, it comes out day by day.
Yeah, and of course by England you mean Britain, as in the United Kingdom, the whole shebang. Yeah, it does. I mean, obviously I'm British, I was born here, I look at it and I just think that a lot of the things I'm watching don't really align with growth in our economy. So let's take the farmers, forcing them to pay an inheritance tax, which would only end up the land getting smaller and smaller, which means that they can no longer provide for their families. They'll obviously sell the land, and that doesn't make any sense. Are you seeing a lot of policies and looking at them thinking, actually, whether it's English or British or not, a lot of them don't actually make financial sense?
Yes, exactly. I read that this silly little move on the farmers, on the middle sort of range farmers, is going to produce an amount of £500 billion in tax. But at the same time, the British government has earmarked £550 billion, I think it's billion, for farmers in the outside world to support them. I mean, if somebody can explain the logic of that, I would really be pleased to hear it, because I'd like to apply it in, my own sort of businesses.
Yeah, it's probably 550 million, but it's almost like a saviour complex that we feel we need to do this so that we look good to the rest of the world. I think it's utter madness. Let's come to Elon. How involved do you think he'll be in Trump's administration? Because he's making some moves and shapes. He's got a good opportunity there.
Yes, Elon is. He's found his feet in life. He's been having to do all the hard work of, like most people, they get a job and they have to do that job until they finally have enough sort of money to go and do what they'd really like to do. And I think in this case, Elon has found his feet in politics, and I'm probably the most surprised. So I never thought he would, but he's doing really well, and the things he's coming up with are terrific. I'd like to point out he's not far right, so please just get that clear. He's very centre, he's very much a centre person. So I don't think we must go on this far right trip,
I think he's just common sense to me. I'm so glad that he's sort of taken over Twitter or X now, because it was going so far to the left and it was turning into all these people would say horrible things to me, calling me names. But you look at their profile and it said #BeKind, and you think, but you're cruel, you're horrible. So
yes.
And I was going to ask
you're quite right.
Yeah, it's like all the time calling me all sorts of names. And I'd look and I'd be like, I'm a social carer for people and I work for the NHS and this. And I'd be like, what? Do you think he's doing a good job with X?
Oh, yes. I mean, X, how he got into it is he after, he was sort of dissed by Biden as far as electric cars were concerned. Biden ignored him as an electric car manufacturer, when in fact he's the biggest electric car manufacturer. And then after that, he found himself being, dissed left and right on Twitter, and he couldn't understand it. He felt he's always been a sort of everyman's man, and he couldn't really see why he is getting all this bad publicity. And then they told him, no, Twitter's an arm of the Democrat government. And then he said, in that case, I'll buy it and I'll change it. I'll turn it into a regular platform where everybody can have their say and everybody can be fact-checked and all that sort of thing. So he's done that, and he's trimmed the staff down to what's needed. And on top of that, he's turned it into 6 times, as I heard quite a while back, what it was in terms of numbers. So I can only say, we've got a lot of our family working in it, that they're doing a really good job,
Do you guys get on now? Because there was a bit where you didn't get on so well, and are you proud of him?
Oh, no. They asked me, they put 2 questions together and said, am I proud of him? Never gave me a chance to answer that properly. No. I've always been proud of my children, just like everybody else. I mean, when they breathed, the first time they were born and they breathed, I was very proud of that. So, no, I'm very pleased with what they've managed to do. And all of them, there's a lot of them, they're not just Elon, but particularly Elon, of course, he's done so well. And I'm very happy. And, like any parent, I'm waiting for, the bad call, Dad. And you say, what is it? And I say, nothing, Dad. I'm just on the phone to say hello. I say, no. What are you on the phone for? There's a problem, isn't there? Did you have an accident? You know, I mean, that's a parent's role in life, if you know what I mean. Always to worry. Worry.
So you guys get on though now. You guys get on well.
Oh, yeah, sure. We always got on well.
You always get on well. Definitely united in thought by Sir Keir Starmer. I think everybody's united in thought against him. Errol Musk, thank you so much for joining me. Such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That is, of course, Elon Musk's dad, Errol. See, you get all the best people on this show. Welcome if you just tuned in. 18 minutes after 5 o'clock. Now, earlier, GB News spoke to Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, about how Labour are doing in power so far. And this is what he had to say.
It has been an absolutely disastrous start to the Labour administration, hasn't it?
Not at all. We've had a good increase in the minimum
Mr.
wage.
McFadden.
We've had more help for carers. We've had a freeze in the fuel duty. We've protected the pay slips of people as we said we would in our manifesto. We've had a lot to sort out. You're right. Had to sort out a collapsing prison system. We're having to start to get the NHS waiting list down. We've got legislation going through on transport that we talked about earlier. We've got a big agenda, and this week we're going to take that forward with a new plan for change.
There you go. So there's lots of positive stuff about the Labour government, apparently. I think the proof of the pudding is in the eating. And, but next, it's the interview. I'll be speaking to the nightclub king, Stephen Less. He's over 40 years of experience in the leisure industry, operating nearly 50 bars and restaurants in London. That is on the way. Stay tuned.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French. Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. Kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low. So,
and it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. Not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets at my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, welcome. It's just gone 22 minutes after 5 o'clock. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. I'm Nana Akua, and it's now time for the interview. Today I'm joined by nightclub and restaurant owner Stephen Less. He has over 40 years' experience in the hospitality sector, owning nearly 50 bars and restaurants in London alone. Stephen Less joins me now. Stephen, welcome. Thank you very much. He's had such a journey to get here. We do
2.5 hours.
Oh, my God.
For an hour's journey.
Oh, why? What was going on?
Well, I think there was a demonstration which I didn't know about.
Oh, I didn't know
Then
about that.
I think Fulham were playing, which I didn't know about.
Oh, God.
Even though Tom, the captain's a friend of mine, I still didn't know they were playing. And there was ambulances everywhere, police everywhere.
Well, you're here now.
Yeah.
And we're glad you're here now.
Thank you.
Stephen, you are pretty much the nightclub king, I would say, of in London. You've owned so many bars, restaurants and so on and so forth. Talk to me about the early days in your journey.
OK. Well, it all started, really, when I was involved in a poker game in a nightclub in Finchley Road, which was a pure fluke. A friend of mine was, his mother owned the Purple Pussycat in the Finchley Road. We were friends. They had a vault under the pavement, which was all damp, and my friend Ricky, who's her son, we cleaned it out. We put a poker table in there, and we started dealing, and guys would bring their girlfriends in, leave them on the dance floor. I mean, it was a bit of a flea pit. Leave them on the dance floor, and they'd all come in and gamble, and we'd deal, and that's how that was the beginning of being introduced into the nightclub business. And then a guy called Louis Brown, who was at the time the king of the clubs, he wanted to buy the Purple Pussycat. Rita Chippick, who owned it, said to me, would I do the negotiation? I've never negotiated anything like that in my life. I said, sure. Anyway, cut a long story short, I was about 20-odd. I had to borrow Ricky's brother's red sweater because it only had a hole in it to conduct the interview, the sale that was going to be. Louis turns up in a chauffeur-driven convertible Rolls-Royce wearing a wolf coat and 2 L stations. And he turns up and we sit round the poker table. Louis is there, I'm there, Rita's there, and Ricky, her son, was there. And we negotiated. And then he said to me during the interview, obviously interview, it wasn't an interview, what we're talking about. Negotiation, sorry. Yeah. He said, and if I buy this club, and I will, I want you to run it, he said to me.
That was the beginning?
That was the beginning through... OK, that was the beginning from that casino-type days that led me into the nightclub business, originally through Louis Brown.
Wow. Yeah. So over your time as in the business, how many clubs would you say you've owned and restaurants?
If you take clubs, bars, restaurants, hairdressing salons, ice cream parlours, etc., there's got to be at least 50.
Wow.
Which basically I either built and ran, or I built for somebody else, or I advised people what to do. So, but currently I have a number of businesses, but I have 2 restaurants in central London, one of which you've been to. And I swore, funnily enough, years ago, I would never, ever go back into the restaurant business. It's tough, OK?
I can imagine, yeah.
And what happened was when the pandemic...
Yeah.
And then all the companies were going bust, and I decided that I could acquire a couple of prime locations, because everybody was going bust, and I did that, and that's how I got back into the restaurant business.
Now, and in your view, how's it changed since when you started in terms of the nightclub business? Because these Gen Zers, a lot of them don't drink, a lot of them don't go to clubs, they don't do anything, they're blaming boring.
Right, when we first started running clubs like the Kilt and the Fledermaus and Samantha's and the Scottish St James and all those places, you could run a nightclub, disco nightclub, for £100 a week. And you could run it out your pocket. You know, your rent was £20, the staff worked there for nothing, just for tips. Customers pays an entry fee, there was no VAT, etc., etc. Of course, now, anything like that, which was £100 in those days, is now at least 50,000 a week or more.
Wow.
Or more, OK? I mean, that's for a reasonable size situation. But the nightclub business is not what it used to be.
No.
It's
gone. Was it the pandemic that you think killed it?
No, it wasn't the pandemic. It was the fact that years ago you had to go to a place like a nightclub to meet a person of the opposite sex. Now people get chatted up at the bus stop.
Or they go online.
Or they go online. Yeah. Well, this is before online. Online is...
Of course, yeah.
Is, you know, and that's basically what's changed the nightclub business. And also, you know, like women like dancing, men don't like dancing so much, so a dance floor is not necessary, unless it's a rave, of course, not necessarily the draw generally, but it's basically drinking and eating and socialising, that in whatever form that takes. Now, if you think about it, hospitality is like a jigsaw puzzle. It's got the same components, men, women, furniture, music, food, drink, etc. But the shapes inside that jigsaw puzzle is what changes. More an accent on one, an accent on the other, etc. So that's how it's changing. Fortunately, I know how to read the public, because otherwise I wouldn't be in any of the businesses I'm in.
You've had some big celebrities coming to your venues. I mean, give us some name drops.
Well, I mean, there's Richard Branson, who wanted to buy into my business. I mean, bear in mind, I work 24/7, and it's not all profit. It's very tough. And in some cases, we have to support businesses that are losing money. I won't go into the Rachel Reeves situation for a second.
Oh, yeah, God, yeah.
OK, because that...
It really?
Oh, yeah.
How's that affected you guys?
It will affect. It has already, but it will affect. I'm going to have to start losing a few staff, maybe 20 or 30 staff.
And so this is the business rates, NI, and the minimum rates.
Minimum wage is not the biggest problem. Yeah. NI and the rates are the two biggest problems. Now, if you're running a hospitality restaurant of some sort and you're breaking even, you can't afford to now plunge with those extra expenses. So I'm looking at my options, and I'm looking at how I can reinvent the wheel, because that's what I do. And if I don't reinvent the wheel, I will go down, like lots of people will go under, especially for the rate situation and the NI.
Wow, it's like they're not really thinking about the reality of the situation. They're just coming out with these ideological plans that don't really relate to the real world.
Well, they need to talk to people like me before you do it. I mean, if I have an idea and I think it can work, I talk to my team, they come up with, don't do this, what about this, etc. And you bat it around so it comes out with something you can move forward in. But the government aren't listening to that at all.
They've got a massive majority. They think they don't need to, I think.
Yeah, but they do.
Yeah, I think they really do.
But they do, trust me, they're casualties along the way. There'll be casualties in my business in the new year, in my own businesses, because of it.
So it's Christmas season, though, now. This must be a busy time of year for you.
Not as busy as it should be.
No.
In fact, you know, July and August are pretty flattish. September, October, November, December should fly. It's not flying. Yeah, it's bubbling, but it's not flying at all.
Wow.
And whether that's to do with tourism, people on holiday, people not spending their money, people worried about what the economy is going to do to them, holding on to your money because you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. And the other problem is that all these things that the government are doing, they may think is the right thing to do, and they say it's not going to affect the people's pockets. It has to affect people's pockets. If they put, effectively, if they put me out of business or me to the point where my expenses are so high, I've got to raise the prices for the customers, will they pay it? Right? So if they don't pay it, it's massive. If they do pay it, everybody's being squeezed from every corner.
It doesn't make any sense to me. Finally, Stephen, we're running out of time. Talk to me about some of the clubs you've got in London. You've got a couple, or restaurants.
Well, I've got Americana in the Haymarket, which is in the middle of Theatreland. It's a beautiful... Well, you've been to the restaurant.
It's lovely.
It's got a hidden bar at the back and a private dining gallery above the bar, which seats about 40 people, which we donate to charities. We support about 14 charities already. If that's not booked for an event, we give it to the charity, they auction it. any charities want to contact me, we'll do the same for them, and it's growing. I've got Elaine's, and Elaine's we opened 2 months ago. It's a New York bar, restaurant and deli in Kingsway. And you haven't been there, but I'll take you there. It's very special.
Thank you, Steve.
You'll like it.
I like the sound of that. Stephen Less, thank you very much for coming.
My pleasure. Nice to see you again.
Really good to talk to you. That is, of course, Nightclub King Stephen Less. Well, with this lovely Christmassy season, welcome if you've just tuned in. Where have you been? It's near the end of the show now. I'm Nana Akua, but there's loads more here on GB News. You can download the GB News app and find out. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Still to come. Should MPs be means tested for their expenses? Cabinet Minister Liz Kendall, who axed pensioners' winter fuel payments, has her own energy bills on for her second home paid for by, you guessed it, us, the taxpayer, whilst she lives in a £4 million London mansion. What do you think? Is she an absolute hypocrite? But first, let's get your latest news with Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you from the newsroom. 33 minutes past 5. The top story tonight: the number of migrants crossing the English Channel under the leadership of Sir Keir Starmer has now hit a new milestone. Over 20,000 arrivals since Labour took power in July. The latest came in today as Border Force intercepted 2 small boats carrying, we understand, around 100 people. That marks the first crossings in nearly 2 weeks and brings this year's total now to just under 34,000 people, already surpassing last year's figure of 29,500. It also comes as Labour's preparing to unveil its new migration plan, but without a target on reducing those numbers. The assisted dying bill is now facing fresh challenges as some MPs who backed the vote this week are now hinting they may reconsider their stance. Concerns over palliative care and safeguarding have started to spark fresh debate, with MPs set to propose amendments when the bill moves to its committee stage. The Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, warned us here on GB News that there is still a long road ahead.
Now that Parliament's voted on that on Friday, it will go into committee. It will be considered in much more detail now, like every other piece of legislation, and it should be because it's such a serious issue. And the House of Commons will have to vote on it again in a few months' time. So this bill, this big and serious measure, will be properly and fully considered clause by clause now, as it should be. And even though we had the vote on Friday, I still think there's probably a long way to go before this becomes law.
A police investigation is now underway after the sudden death of a woman in her 20s at a nightclub in Belfast. Emergency services were called in the early hours of this morning after reports that 2 women there had fallen unconscious. One of those women was sadly found dead at the scene, while the other remains in hospital, currently receiving treatment. Officers are now urging anyone with information to come forward as their inquiries continue across the city. Police are hunting a man caught on camera performing a Nazi salute during a pro-Palestine protest in central London. The gesture was made near counter-protesters waving Israeli flags as tensions flared by Piccadilly Circus on Saturday. Rival groups were heard trading abuse at Coventry Street, separated by metal barriers and a wall of police officers. The Metropolitan Force is appealing for information, calling the act a potential public order offence. And counter-protesters say the incident shows why British Jews feel unsafe in the capital. And let's just bring you an update on that breaking news from Wales we shared with you in the last half hour or so, that dozens of homes have been evacuated after a sinkhole, believed to be up to 60 feet deep, appeared at the bottom of a local resident's driveway in Merthyr Tydfil. Residents there say they heard rumbling and collapsing overnight, fearing their homes could be swallowed. The sinkhole is believed to have been triggered by a collapsed culvert, according to council officers there, just days after Storm Bert's heavy rain and flooding. Well, South Wales Police and fire and rescue crews have been on site today, with authorities warning people to stay away as more rain threatens to make that situation in Merthyr Tydfil much worse. Those are the latest headlines for now. Nana will be straight back with you after this very short break.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good afternoon.
afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of blustery showers continuing through the rest of today, but we should see some clear spells overnight. And with some northerly winds on the way, it will be turning colder as we head in towards the new working week. This area of low pressure up to the north of the UK pushes away towards Scandinavia, leaving us northerly winds across all of the UK as we head through Monday. But back to Sunday evening, plenty of showers around. This band of showers across central areas pushes its way eastwards, turning particularly heavy over any high ground. But across southern areas, there should be some clear spells around between those showers, but it will still be quite a mild night compared to what we've seen recently. Temperatures in the south around 6, 7, perhaps 8 degrees, although with some northerly winds across parts of Scotland turning chillier here, perhaps a frost to start the day in places. For northern areas, it will be quite a cloudy start to the day on Monday. Across parts of Scotland, those showers that we see overnight turning increasingly to sleet and snow, particularly over the hills, so definitely feeling a bit of a chillier start here. Across Northern Ireland, we will still see some showers around through the morning, but these likely to be falling as rain. The further south you are, perhaps some sunshine to start the day. Across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day, but for Wales, southern eastern parts of England, perhaps a bit of a brighter start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine as we head through the morning. That band of showers across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards, bringing some quite brisk northerly winds across the eastern coast, so really feeling quite chilly here. But the further west you are, there should be some sunshine as we head through the afternoon. Plenty of blue skies around, even if we do see 1 or 2 showers, and the showers continuing to fall as sleet and snow across Scotland, and widely a much cooler day compared to the weekend. Temperatures generally closer to average, around 10 or 11 in the south and only 5 or 6 further north. Those brisk northerly winds continuing across eastern coast as we head through Monday evening, but for many of us it will be turning dry with plenty of clear spells, so that will lead to quite a chilly start on Tuesday, but wet weather is on the way through Tuesday afternoon and into Wednesday, and those temperatures slowly increasing as we head towards the second half of the week.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon. If you just tuned in, welcome. Even though it's towards the end of the show, I forgive you. You are here at last. It's just coming up to 41 minutes after 5 o'clock. I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News. We're live on TV, online and on digital radio. Now, the big story, of course, Cabinet Minister Liz Kendall has been branded a hypocrite for removing winter fuel payments from millions of pensioners, whilst bills at her second home are being met through the public purse. When all is said and done, should she really be allowed to claim costs for her second property in her Leicestershire West constituency? Or is this just in the name of the game with politicians these days? I'm joined now in the studio by political correspondent at The Spectator, James Heal. James Heal, if it's not one thing, it's another. I mean, this is just an absolute ludicrousness that she should be allowed, or any of those MPs, actually, on these sort of high salaries, should be allowed to claim expenses like this from the taxpayer.
Well, yeah, and I think the defence in Liz Kendall's favour is, of course, that she said no rule's been broken. But, of course, there's an echo in that from the expenses scandal 15 years ago, which is that MPs can follow the letter of the law. But really, is it in the spirit? And I was just looking up before I came on air the average heating prices for a home in the UK. It's about £150 a month. And she was charging £250 a month over this time period, and yet she was only living there, I think, 1 or 2 days a week. So it's extraordinary how much she was billing in terms of costs. And you wonder if she might have Waterloo over this.
Well, somebody mentioned that she had a tenant. Now, I don't know that for sure. It's not been verified. But again, if you've got somebody living in the house as well, if that is the case, I don't know. We can check and we will check, but if you've got somebody living in there as well and then you're still claiming all of that, you couldn't possibly divide, oh, you're using a third of the electric, so I'll charge you this or that. It just seems an absolute
Absolutely, and then you get into these kind of issues about sort of, what is legitimate and what isn't, etc. I do think, as you were saying earlier on the show, about means testing is going to be an issue that comes up again and again, because for 15 years, of course, politicians have had this system of where IPSA does their expenses, and that was all set up because previously it was the case that MPs would vote on their salaries. That was then judged, you shouldn't mark your own homework, you shouldn't set your own pay. But IPSA, of course, for year after year has given above inflation salaries. At the same time, of course, public sector workers have had less than inflation increases until recently, and of course the private sector has been subject to great fiscal pressures. And we were just saying before we came on here, which was, if it's not your money, you spend it very differently. And so I think that it's going to be the worst possible look for this government. And of course, at the same time, that Winterfield is causing them again and again different political issues for not much in the way of Treasury savings and spending a great deal of political capital on something that's very unpopular.
And utter madness, I think, because, OK, people could easily opt out, but I think that MPs should be means tested when it comes to expenses, but specifically for the second home. I get it that we can pay something towards the rent. There should be a contribution, percentage-wise or whatever. But I just find it absolutely abhorrent that they will take this. Even when they get the pay rises, they always go, oh, well, it's not down to me, so I sort of have to take it. It's like, no, you don't. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what is jarring so much about this story. And, of course, knowing that I think Liz Kendall's, of course, then it brings up the issue about sort of how out of touch she is as Work and Pension Secretary or not. Some of that criticism is fair, some of it's unfair, I think. But, again, we have got a big speech this week by the Prime Minister on resetting the government. And headlines like these are the worst possible thing for a Labour government that, of course, was elected on less than a third of the vote and in office has burned through its political capital at a rate of knots. Yeah, and of course we had Louise Haigh. Of course, yeah, on Friday morning, extraordinary story. I think there's more answers to be had on that, and I suspect when Starmer does his press conference on Thursday, he'll be asked about what he knew and when. Well, that depends on whether he wants to take the questions from certain
from GB News, for instance.
From GB News. I think they've learned that that's not a wise thing to do. I mean, on many days we beat, on average viewings, BBC News Channel and Sky News for average viewing. So I think that we're an important part of the equation and they need to start listening. Absolutely. And I think that making sure that you are listening to all parts of the ecosystem as well, because, in some ways I have sympathies with, the government of the day. It's very different to what Tony Blair, for instance, had to put up with 25 years ago. Much more different. Social media, and of course, you've just been talking about Elon Musk as well. But look, stories like this, they need to get ahead of the comms and I think work with the press on it rather than against them. And I want to finally come to the poll, the petition, where it almost has reached 3 million. It has slowed down considerably. Everyone says, oh, it's not going to make any difference at all. But I think it does make a difference. What are your thoughts on it? I think it's a sort of mechanism to crystallise discontent with the public. And I don't think it particularly will have much effect in terms of the Westminster Hall debate on January the 6th. But I think these things are symptoms. And the danger is, of course, is that the government doesn't actually get a grip of what's going on, articulate a vision, and actually tries to get off the back foot and move on to the offensive in terms of prosecuting its agenda in government. All right, James Hill, thank you very much. Really good to talk to you. That is political correspondent James Hill of The Spectator. Right, still to come. It's clickbait. What on earth is going on here?
Oh, guess what I've done? Made a proper error doing this again, Nana.
But what is it that he's done? I'll bring you the rest of that clip after this short break. James Hill can't wait to see what happens.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Apparently, in the Mail, page 5, hard-pressed bosses already having to deal with deadlines, red tape and staff who won't actually come into the office over Christmas. And they're saying that Christmas parties this year are going to be as lame as ever because everyone's afraid of basically getting cancelled or misbehaving or getting sacked for their behaviour. Would you risk it, Trey, at Christmas?
Do you know, I've actually never had a normal job in my life, so I wouldn't last a second because I'm not very politically correct. But it must be horrendous, really, because rather than enjoying yourself, you're having to completely always censor yourself. And it might be the most innocent of stuff that's said to someone that they then take offence to, which means you're going to probably just keep your mouth shut, which doesn't sound like the best of parties, does it, really?
No. Tricky one, isn't it? Because you're not at work, so it's not an office issue if, some banter and it's taken the wrong way. But still, it's still a work environment, isn't it?
Yeah. If HR shows up,
It's a work party. It's a work event.
HR shows up, I'm gone.
Yeah, well, that's what it is. And so even for us this year, first of all, it's the first year we're calling it a holiday party. I don't know how I felt about that.
Really? What, your company's doing that?
Yeah, they're calling it a holiday party.
Oh, no, well, no.
Yeah, I know. I voted against.
So they got rid of the word
Christmas.
Why?
Because we want to be inclusive.
How's it not inclusive to call it Christmas?
I know. Trust me.
Are you still going to go? I wouldn't bother going. I'd say no.
I am going to go, but I'm going to go dressed as Mrs. Claus, and it's going to be Christmassy, and I'm going to make sure that Christmas enters the door with me.
Yeah, you spread that Christian vibe.
100%. But outside of that, there is that element of HR showing up, and HR will be sober, and they've already prepped them to say, like, listen, this isn't your party. HR can have their party. This is your hangout.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's being PC.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome. If you just tuned in, you've come in at a good point because it's now time for Clipbait, where I review a strange clip hitting the headlines. So here we go. What on earth? We're going to play the little one. We'll play the short clip first. We've got the really small one. OK, so have a look at this clip, and then I want to see if you guys can work out what's going on. Let's play.
Ow! Ow! Oh! Doing a full body black face mask. Hate my life. I'm going to put it everywhere. God, guess what I've done? Made a proper error doing this again, Nana. I'm going to start peeling it off. Ow! Ow! Oh, yeah. Oh, that is so sore. Why have I done this? Ah! I'm crying a little bit.
So what do you think he did? What did he do? He did say at the beginning.
I think it's sort of the era of TikToks personified, isn't it?
No, he just put a body face mask, a body mask.
Face mask.
Body mask all
Wow.
over his body.
My question is, what's the backstory to this?
I think it's hilarious. We just have a little bit of fun. Yes, anyway, so that's what was happening there. He was actually peeling off a body mask. It was like supposed to be a face mask. He put it all over him, and he wished he hadn't done it. Right, so joining me, the chairman of the Global Britain Centre, Alan Vogel, and also co-founder of Novara Media, Alan Bastani. How do we follow that? Let's follow it with Supplement Sunday, where we discuss some of the other stories that caught our eye. Aaron Bastani, you're first.
So it concerns the elections to the Welsh Senedd, the Welsh Parliament for next year. Polling out by YouGov today has Plaid Cymru topped with 24%, Labour on 23, down 13 points. Wow. And, of course, Reform tied with Labour on 23, up 22 points. And, you know, if that happens next year, you'd probably have a Plaid Labour coalition led by Plaid. But, you know, you're not a million miles away there from a Reform Tory coalition and Labour in Wales, which is, of course, it is the Labour heartland of heartlands now. And that is utterly extraordinary. For that to have happened the same year that Keir Starmer won a bigger majority than Margaret Thatcher ever achieved is mind-blowing, like how volatile British politics is now.
Or just how bad Keir Starmer is, to be fair. I mean, we can't blame it on British politics that he's... I mean, a lot of people say he's terrible. Aman, what are your views on that? And then we'll do your story.
I think it's the first time in 100 years that in Wales the Labour Party is not leading the polls. And for Reform to come out of nowhere, I think, tells the whole story of how fed up people are, ordinary people are with the state of the Labour Party. And sort of what's happened over the last...
They've had enough.
They've had enough.
A couple of months of it, and that's actually enough. Aman, what's your story?
My story is about our latest Labour Party import, sectarianism on our streets, but where it's coming from. So this week we've seen in Bangladesh, we've seen the takeover of democratically elected government there by Islamist-backed Muhammad Yunus. And that's meant the killings and harassment of Hindus and minorities in Bangladesh, but it's feeding back onto our streets. So earlier this summer, we saw running battles in the streets of East London against The UK offices, by the way, this is quite interesting, of the then Prime Minister, the Awami League Party. But my question is, what on earth are these people doing here if they're so interested in politics of abroad, of countries which are foreign? And that's what we're facing here. We're facing sectarianism on our streets, foreign conflicts being fought out, and this is the latest in that episode. So I think the only solution is that anyone who's more interested in the foreign politics of a foreign country than engaging in our domestic politics should be deported. If you like it so much, go live there.
Yeah, it does seem odd, doesn't it? Some people come here to escape a regime that they feel is awful, and then they try and literally replicate it here in this country. I don't really get it.
Is that not on our streets? No.
No. Well, my final story, I'll give you mine quickly. Greg Wallace, he's what was the comments that he made? It was just, oh goodness, he needs to stop going on about it, really. But he said, what I can't remember the comment he made. Just ignore him, actually, I can't be bothered.
Well, this is the BBC one.
Middle class. Yeah. Yes, he said that it was middle-class women of a certain age that were complaining. Oh, Greg Wallace, really, man, Greg, stop. Quit whilst you're ahead, you were never ahead. But really, seriously, I don't know why I bothered. Listen, we are running out of time, so I've got to move on. But on today's show, I've been asking, should we means test MPs for expenses? But according to our poll on X, Aaron Pastani, any guesses what people said, percentage-wise?
I'm guessing they've said yes, yeah.
What percentage, give us?
Oh, I have 85%.
85%?
Oh, I'm going higher, 90.
90%, let's see. Well, 94% say yes, absolutely. You're 100% right. They should absolutely be paying for their expenses, especially on their second home. Only 6% of you said no. I've got to say a huge thank you to my panel, Chairman of the Global Britain Centre, Aman Bogle, and also co-founder of Navara Media, Aaron Bastani, for joining me today. And a huge thank you to you at home for your company. I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. I'll be doing breakfast with Isabel Webster. I'll leave you with the weather. Thank you so much for your company. Have a wonderful week. Take care.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon. Welcome to your latest GB News weather from the Met Office. So plenty of blustery showers continuing through the rest of today, but we should see some clear spells overnight. And with some northerly winds on the way, it will be turning colder as we head in towards the new working week. This area of low pressure up to the north of the UK pushes away towards Scandinavia, leaving us northerly winds across all of the UK as we head through Monday. But back to Sunday evening, plenty of showers around. This band of showers across central areas pushes its way eastwards, turning particularly heavy over any high ground. But across southern areas, there should be some clear spells around between those showers, but it will still be quite a mild night compared to what we've seen recently. Temperatures in the south around 6, 7, perhaps 8 degrees, although with some northerly winds across parts of Scotland turning chillier here, perhaps a frost to start the day in places. For northern areas, it will be quite a cloudy start to the day on Monday. Across parts of Scotland, those showers that we see overnight turning increasingly to sleet and snow, particularly over the hills, so definitely feeling a bit of a chillier start here. Across Northern Ireland, we will still see some showers around through the morning, but these likely to be falling as rain. The further south you are, perhaps some sunshine to start the day. Across northern parts of England, quite a cloudy and damp start to the day, but for Wales, southern eastern parts of England, perhaps a bit of a brighter start for many of us. Plenty of sunshine as we head through the morning. That band of showers across northern parts of England continues to sink its way southwards, bringing some quite brisk northerly winds across the eastern coast, so really feeling quite chilly here. But the further west you are, there should be some sunshine as we head through the afternoon. Plenty of blue skies around, even if we do see 1 or 2 showers, and the showers continuing to fall as sleet and snow across Scotland, and widely a much cooler day compared to the weekend. Temperatures generally closer to average, around 10 or 11 in the south and only 5 or 6 further north. Those brisk northerly winds continuing across eastern coast as we head through Monday evening, but for many of us it will be turning dry with plenty of clear spells, so that will lead to quite a chilly start on Tuesday, but wet weather is on the way through Tuesday afternoon and into Wednesday, and those temperatures slowly increasing as we head towards the second half of the week.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the biggest, greatest Great British